welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon Kane, and I do appreciate you as ever for tuning on in, as well as all the new subscribers that have been jumping aboard recently throughout this tremendous offseason we've been having here over on the channel. We've got some more defense we're going to be talking today. In fact, I think it's all defense all the time today. We spent enough time with that offense and that explosiveness that exists over there. I want to talk a little bit about this particular defense because as much as the offense may have to carry the day as far as being the torchbearer, the defense is still going to have to do its part and maybe even have some potential to go beyond that and do more than just tread water, not be at the back end of things, not be setting bad records as far as the most, I believe they had most yards given up in the secondary at one point a couple years ago, and then 2 years ago was most yards given up receiving to running backs a couple years ago, and they were setting record pace through like 11-10 games into the season. So you're looking for them to get around into the middle point of things, and you're looking as well for this new defense that you have brought aboard, the Vic Fangio cover 2 shell. When are we going to get the returns of this? We had turned away from our cover 3, and why aren't we now seeing the defense showing a little bit more vibrance to it than we did last year, where once again it was in the back end. In fact, it probably one of its worst years in total, because even in those aforementioned times when you were setting record paces, 2020, 2021, you were at least able to turn things around by the end of the season. Some of that came on the back of weaker opponents, but you did do it. But they were not really able ever fully to do that last year. They seemed to actually wear down as the year went along. And the run game, the run fits, all that other stuff is definitely at the forefront of this, and that's going to be a big question mark going in to this season. But one of the places that you can help, I think, the run game, and one place the coaching staff is counting on helping the run game, is going to be in having the secondary players be a little bit more active and coming down and helping out. We certainly know in Jamal Adams, you have, when he's healthy, one of the better tackling strong safeties that exist in football. But and I think even the people that would ding Jamal for his coverage liabilities and the things that he can't do necessarily if you play him deep would acknowledge that he is fantastic against the run. And there may be a couple better, but that's one of his foremost skills he brings to play if he can stay healthy. Even if he can't stay healthy, you still get Julian Love, who was a top 25 player last year in tackles in the NFL. And I'll tell you, there weren't a lot of safeties top 25 in the NFL in tackles. He's as willing as anybody to put his nose in there and get dirty. And then, of course, on top of all this, you've got Devin Witherspoon, who many would have acknowledged outside of Seahawks fan base, this just being a general thing that you would hear about from him, nationally speaking, is him being with really not even the guy in second. I didn't even hear anybody, really even say second place was close in this from what I was hearing nationally wise. And that was that he was the best tackling cornerback in this draft. You start to bring these elements to bear in the secondary, that's going to help you out. Today, though, we're going to talk another thing that I think is going to lead into allowing for this defense to be able to flourish and be able to have that secondary help a little bit out with the front, because I know many of us are still concerned about the defensive line and where it's at, and if it's good enough at this point to hold the day. I mean, I think it's a valid concern at this point. You've got some youth. You don't have necessarily as much nose tackle strength and depth as you probably would like. Seahawks are probably going to be making a move here to reinforce the ranks, but let's concentrate today a little bit on the secondary and what they did. And shout out to Brett Coleman, does great work out there. And he did his little Seahawk featurette on the team a bit. And he had a point, it was a little bit of a detail that had gone under the radar for me throughout kind of the season last year, getting into the emotionality of things and getting stuck a little bit on the fact that really at the end of the day with this, what I'm watching from the Seahawks defense is these coverages that just stay so soft and so unwilling at times to play anything tight at the forefront of it. And this defense even still had a little bit of that within it, but it is a different turn of the key for our Seahawks. It's not them merely doing the same thing. So I'll show you a thing. This is the coverage rates from the Seahawks last year. And this is between the 20s because this is, once you get in the goal line situations and stuff, things play a little bit differently down there. But you notice when you go down this list that, like all points of data, this tells a story. And let's also acknowledge that when Seahawks were running through the Legion of Boom, just as many of you guys are already hip to this, any people are a little, maybe, weren't as aware of this. Of course, through the years of the Seahawks legendary defense, and then for many years after it was a legendary defense, you continue to run cover 3 as a real forefront coverage. 70, 75, 80, 85%. Legion of Boom days, you might have been even cracking into the 90% realm of it. You were always running it at the highest rate of anybody in the NFL. And you used to run it in a certain way, of course, when you had Brandon Browner and Sherman on each side, to where you could run a press look out of it. And then as the years went along, it was a little bit more now about having your corners in off coverage to protect at times, in my opinion, against some of their speed liabilities. They're not going to be quick enough. They're not going to be able to get the hips flipped around fast enough to stay with those receivers if they do try to press, especially if they miss their press. But this shows you things that certainly make sense and we already would know. Number one, you see no in cover zero. This is when you're going to be going, bring in the house, right? This is everybody's coming. We're going to man up on the outside and hope your guy can hold up. The Seahawks ran cover zero at a very infrequent rate last year. So 31st in the league, and how they run cover zero. This is a representation of also the fact they just don't tend to like to run much blitz and even beyond that. So that's not a shocker there. The cover one, cover two, a little sprinkling of that in. Cover one is certainly something that they've done in the past. Cover three, that old friend, still running it. But when you notice this stands out to me when I looked at this, is the 34.5% when you're running that is a big difference, I feel like, from where they were 8 years ago, where they were 4 years ago, and how much of the frequency we would have ran with this type of defense. And something has picked up the room of that in this stead. And it's interesting too, because you went to this Vic Fangio cover two shell and you might have thought, well, that means we'll probably end up, because I think in Vic Fangio's defense, and at least the old days, they would still end up a lot of times 40% of the time in cover two. Yet you notice on this, you're actually over only in pure cover two situations last year, 6% of the time. So you're not really running it to the Fangio way of things, and where it's coming from, where the change is happening at, is this quarter, half coverage. That's, of course, what's standing out here. Quarters within that, as well as that 7.5% just running pure quarters, is certainly, I guess sometimes called cover four, I think, is certainly very much has some reminiscent stuff with quarter, half. We're going to get into the details of quarter, half here. But this stood out to me as a rising percentage, as something maybe the coaching staff, kind of as they're onboarding the new, they're still doing a little bit of the old, but they're really bringing into the new here in what they're doing. And I know that there are only so many coverages in the books, but what I do like also about the splits of the way we look at these coverages is that there's so much more difference within this than what it's been in the past. You have just, instead of being this 80%, cover three and then 15% cover one or something in that realm, and then these others just making up such a small, now you're actually forcing offenses to understand that you're going to potentially be in any one of these coverages at any given point in time. And then that makes you that much harder to prepare for. That makes you that much more predictable pre-snap. And these are two things that, beyond the defense getting better and out chess matching somebody else on the other side of it, these are two things that have been big things that have held back the Seahawks in recent years from a defensive standpoint. You're taking the ability to disguise, you're taking that component of the game, and you're not introducing it. You're not even trying to take advantage of that. We're going to show them what we are. This is what we are, and good luck stopping it. And that's all great when you've got Hall of Fame level of talent across the board, but when you've got to manufacture stuff from time to time, it just doesn't really work. There's going to be a part of this I'm really going to like when it comes to the cover half, to me, that stands out. And I mentioned it in the title for my video, and I believe that this is the case. This is a defense for playmakers. This is a defense that's going to allow you to do some different things, which will then allow a little bit more freedom out there for your guys to, jump routes and go make a play. Because when you are structured up, let's go back and look at this. When you are structured up in this old Legion of Boom defense, and you can see here's the press look you got on the outside, your post snap, you've got to get your bail technique. It's literally what they used to tell their corners. You're running backwards now. You're staying on top no matter what. Earl Thomas, you're in deep center field. And while Earl Thomas was able to man that center field and get himself some interceptions and definitely be a playmaker back there, and Earl Thomas was fantastic. And Quandre Diggs as well, when he inherited kind of into that role, certainly picked it right up. And though he doesn't maybe have the pure speed of Earl, he has every bit, you could argue, maybe the instincts and certainly the understanding of the game and how it plays from a secondary standpoint. But what you are led to here with this is a predictability. This Peyton Manning here knows that Chancellor's going to be coming down. He knows those corners are going to drop into bail. He knows Earl Thomas is going to go over the top. He knows this pre-snap. He knows this in the week leading up. It is no surprise. To me, in the modern NFL, you have to start to adjust that. You've got to start to build in those places where if there's 10 advantage points on the board there that you can go grab all of them. Why leave one out just for the sake of leaving one out? And the Seahawks are stopping leaving one out. And what's that then allowing is more kind of plays like you're going to see here today. I'm sure you guys have, many of you probably already seen it here that's in the chat, which is the Quandre Diggs play that I showed yesterday and I put on the channel, where Quandre is playing in his quarter responsibility, and yet because of his film study, because he's got some help on the back end and other places in the coverage, because he knows in this spot that the Raiders don't exactly know the type of coverage they're running, because the Seahawks have been more willing up into this year. This is deep into the season. They've been more willing to leave outside of just running cover 2, just as this one, like a guy playing an instrument and they're just hitting the one chord. Now I'm not sure if I'm what I'm seeing. And as Quandre talked about in that play, he made this play. He jumped this route. He left his responsibility because he knew the wheel was never thrown to by Derek Carr. That was never going to happen. And this is what you want your smart players to be able to do. But if he's playing deep center field on this kind of play and sees that kind of situation, he doesn't have the ability to break that off then. He's got a whole center field deep that he has, both halves of the field that he's got responsibility for at that point. That means there's just no way he can go and try to, pull the trigger on that play. Go get it. And I think this defense allows you a little bit more in its structure to do that. Take a look here at it's called cover 6. It's also called quarter half. So this is something I know that football terms with their confusion. And we call it this, but then we call it that. I like quarter half because it just sounds snazzier, and cover 6, cover 4, cover 3. It can all kind of run together in the mind, I think. But let's go through a little bit of the interesting aspects of this defense, because I do think there's some interesting little wrinkles here within this. And sorry, I'm just getting my stuff set up here for my notes. So you've got the cover 2 to the weak side. And what does that mean? That means that where you see the half field read here with the free safety, and obviously to away from the strong side of the formation. Now this has got a fullback look on this, but you could just as much imagine this fullback as being a slot receiver here, and then having your S player here that they've got, which is the Sam linebacker, instead a slot corner. So you can flip that out here in your mind. The coverage would still stay the same. The strong side, as I often tell you guys, is to usually the right side. Sometimes it goes to the left, especially if there's a bigger side of the field over there with the hash marks, but it will tend to most offenses run right-handed quarterbacks, right side. So you can count on some of that from a defensive standpoint when you are building your defense. And I know our alignment up front here is not going to be the same the way we run our cover 4, because you can imagine what we would do with ours is these E's would be wide 9 technique outside linebackers, and then we'd have probably the defensive tackles a little tighter in their splits if they're running a 4-man front, as we saw they often did last year. But what I want you to really concentrate on is going to be really the secondary place here, because this is to me the interesting part. You have essentially sort of the cover 4, the strong side of the field essentially here, where you have strong side of the field, you have extra guys, and then you have some backing to the back side of the field, some reinforcements for the ranks to the back side of the field. So let's stand up first and understand it's not a pressure-based defense necessarily. We're going to get to where you can maybe turn some of this into a pressure-based, where it's easier to go from this to move this into now blitzing situations, rather than it was being that it was not as easy to blitz from the 4-man front with cover 3 situations. You couldn't do it as much, but you can dictate a little bit more of the action, I think, from this group of things. So when you're running cover 2 to the other side of the field, notice the corner difference here. Think of Mike Jackson being on the left-hand side, on your right. As you're looking at the screen here, he's going to be the 1/4 guy that's going there to the right side. So he's dropping to that quarter coverage deep, whatever you want to call it there. But he's basically getting deep to his section of the field, and he's got a strong safety who's going to be deep to his section of the field right next to his shoulder. But you'll notice on the other side, the place that you would now have normally Tariq Woolen, remember all through last year, our corners don't move. Woolen tends to be over on that left side. He's now showing up in a press look, isn't he? And this is where this gets interesting as we start to really go a little bit deeper into it with me, because offenses will oftentimes with defenses move their best receiver over to that X spot The X is the receiver that's going to be on the left-hand side of the offense there. He's going to be on the line of scrimmage. See how the Z is a little bit behind in his alignment to the X? The Z is going to usually be off the line of scrimmage. But this gives the opportunity then for a guy that wants to press to know that he isn't dealing with a receiver who's going to have necessarily a free release on this play, meaning it's better set up for the cornerback to be able to press him. And then he has the free safety going behind him with the half field read or a cover two sort of look on the backside to where he's protected. He can take some chances. He can roll with that a little bit. You've got the hook defender there. They can go different other places there with the weak side linebacker there. Part of me likes the thought process of potentially here where you flip in. I don't know if the Hawks would do it, but you could even flip in a Wagner into the will here, move a Bush or move a Brooks then into the pure middle, and then you've got either one of those kind of Wagner's protected a little bit more, and where you kind of align him at that point because his responsibility and coverage is going to be a little bit lessened to me than what you might ask of the middle linebacker. But notice as well, the middle linebacker here isn't being asked to do what you do in a cover two look, which is you're going to have him just run straight up the football field, right? He's going to take his own little 1/4 of the field between the two hashes, and he's just going to sprint up. So there's a little more free range roam here, really with both, in my opinion, the will or the Mike. And the will within this defense can be ubiquitous between a linebacker or let's say you've got a dynamic, strong safety who can get downhill and do some tackling. You can kind of work both in whoever, if you want to do this. So for those that have thought, well, what if we were to want to bring Jamal in as kind of a linebacker type? You could do it here. And then you have Julian Love as your 1/4 field defender. I also like this because if you look at the way the quarters work over to the strong side of the formation between the strong safety there and the other corner on the right side, is that now with a guy like Mike Jackson, you have some protection right to his shoulder there where he can play that off coverage, but then you've got the strong safety there that can kind of take away a route if there's an issue that they have on a particular route, or, Mike's got a little bit more protection there. Woolen becomes the guy a little more, in my opinion, on an island to a tiny degree here, especially if those linebackers have to play to more of a center point on the center place on the field as far as in the middle of the defense. But I do love where you really start to now take advantage of what Woolen does best here. Kind of it's not building a defense around, just taking advantage of the strengths within your defense. You've got a guy here in Quandre Diggs as your free safety here, as I just showed you on that last play, who might have, in the previous play, he was quarters responsibility, so he's probably less likely to break off his coverage if he's in the half wide here. But if you flip the field like it was there with the Raiders, where their formational strength just flips it a little bit so that his responsibility sort of changes now to a strong safety. Like I've talked about before, this defense does have a little bit more of a reliance on your strong safety needing to do free safety stuff and your free safety needing to do strong safety stuff. You got to have a little bit more. It helps it if you have guys that can do both of those two things. But this is where I think there's less of the one guy out in center field or your corner on your island who's got to just think about staying deep over the top. There's more of an opening now to be a little more. It's not full on pressure based. It's still going to protect on the back end. But I do like to think about this, the door that opens up of what if you want to keep all of the rest of the coverage on this the same way, or you have your free safety going to that half field, but then you turn it into a man coverage situation. So instead of it being, just quarter, half, you've got a man-based element to it in Tariq Woolen, because that's, of course, what he did best last year. And then there's, of course, the nuance between the two places. They've got the scheme's got a lot of little bits. Like, let me give you guys a little bit of a drop on this, and I'm still starting to unpack all the little tidbits of this quarter, half, and how teams run it and how they kind of use off it. There's a thing called the mod coverage, MOD. Scheme essentially means that the cornerback will have man coverage on the one receiver if he runs deep and outside routes. If the one ends up running a route shorter than 5 yards, the cornerback calls smash or under. So there's a little bit more moving parts, and there's a couple of different little terms they've got within it. They're baked in on just handing off guys, transitioning to guys, changing guys over within this defense. When I was looking into it, Carl Scott's actually got a really nice YouTube video online of him talking to people, kind of a little symposium deal that he's discussing a little bit of the coverage. A guy that's, of course, kind of taken over, I think, a bit more for Desai and his loss this offseason as he's moved on to become defensive coordinator with the Eagles. So they get into some of the details of this, but there's more room now for you to do some creative things. Remember the problems we had with the cover three? Maybe one of the big killers of the cover three was the flood zone concepts. and McVay being at the head of it. Certainly last year, even I think Shanahan really was picking that up from McVay and even almost doing better with it last year than McVay's done in recent years, probably because they had better talent to do it. But it's essentially that you're running one guy through a guy's zone and then another guy right behind him, and he's going to be wide open because your zone defender is going to pick up the first guy and keep him. And he's not going to hand off. And it's a hard thing. It's a hard balance to strike as a defender to get that right. But this is a defense now that can start to bake some of that stuff of, okay, if this goes to that, then I'm handing you off to this and you know it. If we see this and this, then I'm going to, and there's a little more thinking going on. It's a little bit less of just, we're going to line up and play it as it is, and we're just going to beat the hell out of you. And you know what's coming. We know what's coming. There's nothing you can do about it. Good luck. Less of that now anymore. More to me with if you can transition to more and more, if this quarter half can take more of a prominent role, I think that it has just more ability then to do some fun things within it. Also, I believe blitzing. I talked about if you have a play set up, which I think the Seahawks are looking to do, this is Julian Love, why he's brought in 2 years, $12 million. I don't think you're bringing him in just to be a slot corner. I think there's times you're going to look at moving him around, having him then as that strong safety, bringing Jamal in what would be termed on this as the will linebacker. But what you'd be doing instead is you've got now Tariq coming up in press, and then here comes Jamal over onto the edge of the line of scrimmage. Now can you start to dictate some of the way that the offensive line rolls their protections at that point? Drop them out post snap, play some games down there, bring Bobby up along with them as in a blitz package here. There's less of them having to be formatted to a certain little bubble zone role that they have to inhabit as you would in the prior defenses, and more of a way to me where you can have these three vets between Quandre, Bobby, and Jamal, and these guys can, because they played so much football, when they do see these things happen on the field in a certain way, let's go. Let's pull the trigger. Pull the trigger like we saw from Quandre on this play, where he's got a responsibility. He's supposed to protect deep, but he bails out. Film study had taught him he doesn't have to. Film study was such a big part of the Legion of Boom that doesn't get talked about because we do speak about how talented they were, but those guys lived and breathed football. Lived and breathed football. It wasn't a matter of they just, trained really hard when they were in their facilities. Those guys talked about how even after they left, it was on their mind. They were still discussing it. Again, I showed you the deal there, that last play. Let me show you this is the setup, by the way, of what it looks like live. So here's your cover six here, sort of on paper, so to speak, right? But let's see how it plays out on that play with Quandre and what he was looking at. And that's this way, where you've got Tariq kind of up, not full on press look, but up near the line of scrimmage, certainly not playing really far off. And then we got the corner at the top playing off coverage. And he's got a responsibility to get deep. He's got a half field read with Ryan Neal. And then Quandre's is in quarters here rather than having the half field read. But you see the linebackers up the line of scrimmage with Cody Barton, who ends up tipping this ball. Props to him. And Jordan Brooks as well. You can play some games with that near the line of scrimmage, get them a little bit confused in what they're seeing. It's a fun defense. And the more I research into it, the more I'm liking it because of that creativeness, because of the different things that you can do within it. And then I think it still is nice because it's going to appeal enough to Coach Carroll's want to keep things clear over the top. That's, of course, his defense starts with two things: stopping the run and preventing the big play. And if you're going to take risks, if you're going to be pressure-based, one of the first things that you have to make your peace with is the big play is probably going to happen from time to time when you get got. And Carroll's not yet shown a willingness to kind of exit that approach. So this kind of finds us a happy, maybe medium ground and a place to open the door to get better use out of Tariq Woolen in man situations, to get better use out of, with Jamal Adams down near the line of scrimmage and not having to kind of force the role where he's a safety coming down at the line of scrimmage. And you have now the cover three thing going on the back end. And again, we get back to that predictability standpoint. It's what got Seattle. They could be very predictable in the amount of times they're going to run that coverage. And they ran it for so long, it stopped being something that caught people off guard. It started to become something that had been very refined as a process and how to beat it. And this is why these adjustments were necessitated. It doesn't mean that there's still a day that you can utilize some cover three here and there and find some real success with it. But it has to be something now that's mixed in. It's this part of the game that we didn't really utilize with the Legion of Boom as much in that era because we didn't have to. We have to now, even with this very talented team. You can't leave advantages on the table. You got to pick them up. And there's certainly some downsides with asking players to do a little bit more thinking. But I've often said the modern football player can do more thinking. They're more capable. They can handle more moving parts. It doesn't just have to simply be some sort of caveman, you there, cover that. Don't think too much. Hit man, see man. They can think through some stuff. They can pass guys off. They can hand things off. They can think through. Look at and shout out, by the way, to Quandre Diggs. I haven't said that early enough here today, but shout out to Quandre Diggs, who responded to me on Twitter when I was asking him about this play. But look at how smartly Quandre responded to my tweet as far as asking about the play. Look at how many things he's got breaking down in his mind to arrive at the place where he can jump the route. He's telling you responsibility. He's telling you what he's seeing. He's telling you what film study is. He's telling you what the tendency is of the Raiders when they do run the switch release on the fly sweep, and that they do go to the backside, and bam, he was on top of it. Fantastic play. So get hyped for this. Get hyped up for this year for Quandre Diggs. Get hyped up for the secondary. I don't know what the defensive line is going to do. I think many of you are very right to be a little bit worried about whether or not it's going to be good enough to allow us to be a true contender. We think everything's great enough to be able to get to the playoffs. We all pretty firmly stand in that camp, but is it going to be good enough to get us up over the top in there? I don't know. I think it's going to help, though, having at least three guys. Jamal back in there. Bobby certainly helps. Witherspoon in there is going to help. Love in the secondary is probably going to help. Having those guys in the back end that are willing to tackle on top of that, especially when this is such a defense that's very gap required. You've got your gap responsibility, and if you're there, you got to make the play. If you have safeties that aren't able to come down and be gap responsible, then they might be down in their gap, but they're going to just get run over. I know some people have worries with that too with Diggs as being his main issue. It was mentioned a couple times in my video comments, but that's Earl had his share of missed tackles too. Yeah. Those smaller free safeties are always going to have their moments where it's not always going to look pretty, especially when the Derrick Henrys of the world or those kind of are coming downhill at him. They're going to need some help. Luckily, he's got himself a lot of help. Please, folks, hit that like button if you could for me. I would really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed up, please do get subscribed up. I do appreciate that as well. I hope everyone's having a great summer. We had the All-Star game here with the baseball, which was great to see. There's also been some really great debate here online. I'm going to probably play it here later. I've got it kind of segued up, but I want to get through some of the comments before I play it. Some very good debates online here as far as the cornerbacks go from last season. Boy, this thing just keeps getting fiery and more red hot, it seems, by the month. The Tariq Woolen, Sauce Gardner debate has become the new Richard Sherman, Darrelle Revis debate. It's getting very, very hot, and there's been some pros who've come out and called it like they see it. And for UC fans wondering about this particular thing, whether or not it's our opinion that Tariq's better, that it's like this guy's better, and that you might be thinking, well, no, it's your own biases that are building into this. That's what this is. You're thinking this because you're a Seahawks fan and you love your player, and like all fans, you're overrating him, and that's what it's not what that is here. Asante Samuel Jr., a guy with more career interceptions than Darrelle Revis, played a very long career. Probably won himself a couple Super Bowls during that time there with the Patriots. He came out this past week and he was like shaking his head about these lists with putting Sauce where they're putting it. And I just no. Yeah, and he started getting a lot of heat from Jets fans. Boy, they're on Sauce. They're on the Sauce jock right now, full on. They're drinking the green Gatorade on that one. And he's still kept going hard. It's not that he just come through the tweet. He kept coming back with a couple of different things like, Tariq's better. He takes away the ball. And all these Jets fans are trying to throw all these weird stats at him. And then Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, new Detroit Lion, former Eagle, jumped into the fray on this one. And he started going off, and then Sauce went back off. So they all got on a conference call with DJ Reed on there as well, and Darius Slay discussing, kind of just debating it out. And Chauncey going, yeah, it's like what we've said. It's funny because it's all the things we've said is what the players are saying, which is, you're just in a bigger market. You're in a bigger market, and that's what it is. You're in New York. You got the pub. So, doesn't mean you're better. And we know who's better. And I think Woolen's better. If he's in a bigger market, he'd be more celebrated off what he did last year. And So it's interesting to hear you get it actually from the pros. It's one thing when fans say it, but when it's guys that are pros who played, who are playing, I think it does hit a little bit differently. And I don't think we've been necessarily just sensitive to this one. This seems to be a pretty live debate online as far as just the camp split. Obviously, the sort of Seattle versus New York fans, it's like the rest of the country's like, we don't really care. But I think the players also do kind of care a little bit. I think some of the reason you're hearing some of these cornerbacks pipe up about this, especially a guy like Asante Samuel, who had as many picks as he did through his career, and maybe doesn't feel like, from his standpoint, he is viewed as historically where he thinks he should be viewed for how well he did play. And he's seeing maybe something starting to roll down that lane a little bit like that with Tariq, where then you have Sauce on the other side of it. And Sauce is not a bad player. I've never said he is a bad player, but he's a good tackler. But the handsiness in coverage is insane. And it's more than I have seen of any young player or any vet, for that matter, allowed to get away with in a very long period of time. And I'm not saying it's because he's in New York. I don't know the reasons. You know what I mean? I have no idea what the reasons are from that, but it is what I see on his tape. Go through any of his highlights. We can run his all 22 from last year, and it's just grab time and again. And if the officials stop letting him get away with it, you're going to see a remarkably different player. Woolen wasn't really relying on the grabbing. He's just fast, athletic, long, and he's the unicorn out there as far as his build. So he can run with anybody. He's not scared. I mean, so it's a bit of a different tale, but I have no doubt in my mind, if they both stay healthy, that if these guys are both playing for 5 years, next 5 years, relatively good health, Woolen's a guy that's going to end up with easily, to me, 35, 40 picks. And I don't think Sauce touches 20. I think he has a hard time getting to 15 for the career. And taking away the ball matters. And Woolen isn't awful as a tackler. So please hit the like button, folks. Let's jump over here to the chat with you guys. I'll play a little bit of that tidbit from their conversation. They're kind of fun to listen to them. As Chauncey's trying to check. He pulls out the "listen to a vet" line to him, still with that view of Sauce as kind of the rookie, I guess. But I hope you guys are having a good day. Megan, it's good to see you in the chat. What's up, Seahawks Jose Rodriguez? Good to see you as well. Hope you guys are doing well. Lazy Dog says, woof woof, this dog in North Cal loves 4 rings and up north. Hell yeah. I love 4 rings too. I want my 4 rings. Jose says, I'm still saying 10-7 because of the defensive line. I think that's fair, Jose. I think it's very fair. This is where the weakness exists, and teams can get taken down by their greatest weakness, especially if it's a very, very big one. And you've got a couple of guys there, but they're going to need to reinforce some ranks unless they hope that they can just outscore everybody, which maybe that's the plan. Magic Vlog says, I'm thinking 13-4 this year. Split the 49ers, lose the Bengals, Eagles, Ravens, maybe the Cowboys. Well, we know my cat said 12-5. I'm sitting pretty firmly right now at 12, and I am feeling kind of optimistic for that. Part of me feels like I probably should be around where Jose is, or I should be more into a relative 10. I'm maybe drinking a little bit of my own little Kool-Aid here, the blue Kool-Aid. But I love the team they put together, and I've seen Coach Carroll get a lot out of a young roster. I don't think the schedule is very daunting. I think the division is easy as it's been in years, and I think the team can do something to get that help on the defensive line. It's not like one of those positions where we need a dynamic receiver at the last minute brought back to the team. Remember, for instance, the Seahawks were in that mode in 2006. Right, we were decimated by wide receivers, so we have to go make the first round trade for Deion Branch with the Patriots, and you just don't want to be in that place. We're making that kind of move, so I feel like you can just get a guy in there, unleash him, let him go. He'll know what to do, but you got to go get a talented guy somewhere. Magic says, it's a maybe. Do I think we can beat them? Yeah, sure. Do we still have a decent team that could show up that week? Yes, but I think we win that game. I like it, man. I like the confidence. Gabriel, how you doing, man? Grug, what's up? He's got 11-6. V-Ray, what's up, man? It's good to see you. Ryan Ball says, if Jamal Adams can stay healthy all season, the Hawks go 15-2. You heard it here first. Well, that's a bold proclamation, and one I'm going to give you full credit for if that does click in, Ryan, because I don't think you ever heard anybody else say 15. 15 wins. That would be a hell of a season. Keldon, got some Niner fans in the house. How you doing, man? It's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Keldon says, oh man, I still got this bird on me. Yeah, you know, it just doesn't go away. It's a friendly kind of bird. It's good to see you, though. Ski Nations, you guys remember that the time the Niners won a Super Bowl in like 40 years? I'll warn you, Keldon, we were getting some Niner fans coming in hot last time, so it's got the chat a little bit on edge ready, you know? Like, oh, we doing regular season. Oh, we doing regular season. Okay, we're doing regular season. I'm ready for regular season. Let's go. It was going from like, oh, it's beautiful summer. Team's looking good. On paper, everything's real good. Niner fan, get him. Michael, 49ers played their butts off, only for management to let them down. No quarterback. Would be pissed if I was a Niner player. I would definitely, if the quarterback situation sinks that team, I would definitely be looking at the Niner organization like, really, bro? We played our butts off for years now, and you've let this one position be the thing that's going to hold us back for years on end from winning Super Bowls. And you're not going to do anything about it. Especially you hear them like, I think they turned down the thought process of going after, or at least initially they turned down before trying to go back and get him. But Rodgers, maybe a couple years ago, they haven't really tried to be very outside of the trade up for Lance. But then that whole thing just is weird as well. The whole Lance thing is to me strange. Because I don't know if I would love to have Shanahan under a lie detector and be like, did you want Mac or did you want Lance or really want Mac Jones? And just give me the goods. You were general manager. Who was your call? There's an inkling here for me that I just don't know if was ever really in on Lance. We'll see. I guess their quarterback competition will tell the tale. James Brandon, you follow the Twitter fight with New York Jets fans over Asante Samuel comments that Woolen was better than Sauce. He said you have to watch the tape. It's not all about stats. I did. And Asante Samuel is right in this, in my opinion, just like I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's right in this situation. And these aren't just like scrubs saying this. These are both really good players who have seen a lot of football. It's not really that hard. There's some I say this a lot. There's takes that I have that I might have to get into the depths of, and I might be on my own little island out there in the middle Pacific as far as my take on that. But there's other takes that are, really this is just ridiculous. It doesn't have to be, let's speak in the, these ultimates of one guy's got to suck, so the other guy's got to be great. The other guy's great. This guy's got to suck. It's not that. But we're getting down to who is more exciting, who's really on the superstar approach, who's really got the more upside, or who's topped out where they stand. Who's being a little reliant on this grabby nature that's obvious to anybody that can watch, even in a casual nature. He's doing it. He's not doing it like here and there. He's playing up to that line of the rules of how long you can grab every single play. And the refs are more often not letting him get away with it in a way they wouldn't let other corners. I don't know why. I'm not trying to be they're trying to make a Jets player look good, but they let him get away with it. Good for him. Great. But now I'm not going to look back at you and go, yeah, you're just so great in your technique and you're just so wonderful. You're getting away with something that at some point or another they might decide over an offseason to tamp down on those kind of rules, and you're done as a player. Can't do the same thing to Tariq in the way he's playing. But I do like watching it, James. It's been fun watching it. And the fact that I'll try to play it here after I get through the comments. The fact that they had this 4-man call going on, and Darius Slay's back there trying to be all quiet. And you can tell he don't want to say a whole lot with it. And Gardner's coming hard. And when Darius ain't coming hard, he's like, stop soft selling it, Darius. And Darius like, what? No, it's all good. Yeah. But it's a fun debate. I love it. It's great discussion. And, Quandre was also in discussion talking about too. It's a little bit with, somebody's list about best free safeties in the game, and a lot of them not, including him up on there, and the disrespect, and it is real. I think it's also just indicator to these players of, who watches tape and who doesn't, who's caught up in just national hype and going with the herd, and, who's just really checking things out and what's going on. These corners that tell you who's the better one, they know what to look for. They know what they're watching. They're not just coming in with some out-of-pocket opinion. There's a reason they're saying what they're saying. Michael C. 49ers played their butts. Michael says Seattle's on the other hand. John has been taking care of players. John Schneider. John has a reputation here with John in this organization and how they do take care of players. I think has got to be probably pretty unparalleled within the National Football League. There's probably other teams that do handle and look after their players as much, but I don't think that there's anybody that surpasses them. And you have, the story I think you're referencing, Michael, probably what you're thinking to the forefront of your mind a little bit is KJ Wright had another show come out here recently with Cliff Averill. Good show. Another fun show with a lot of really great details in it, fun stories within it. And certainly that's an awesome channel. Should definitely subscribe up to it. But Cliff was, talking about that neck injury situation, and you can hear him discussing how John Schneider took his trek with him on that, and how he, guided him through it, and helped in a lot of ways in sounding a Cliff of just kind of helping him to make that right determination of I can't do this anymore. There's other teams that'll let me sign a waiver. Cliff's talking about these teams that are like, yeah, we'll let you play with that neck. Just, sign this waiver. And you have John going, no, you're not going to play for Seattle ever again. You shouldn't play. It's not right. And I do think that in a sport where everyone talks about, Michael, how cutthroat it is and how every organization will just, get you wherever they can get you, I don't think that the Seahawks show a lot of evidence for that. There's certainly times they've got to do certain things with certain players that are all along those realms. But for those guys that have come in here and put the pelts on the wall and put their blood on the line and broken their bone and been like, they are treated in a lot of ways, almost like it would sound like you treat family rather than treating a player at times. And these guys coming back now, these guys being a part of the organization in their own little ways, I think is representative of that. I think the players have told you this very same thing, just like Cliff did in that interview giving John his props. I've heard similar stuff from other players in regards to John like that. He seems to be a guy that, gets it, that the old mentality of just use him up and then throw him to the trash bin and go find the next thing. And that's a short-sighted mentality. And that goes against the philosophy they've tried to, I think, probably create in that building. Greg, if you guys haven't noticed, the Jets are literally a carbon copy of the 2022 Broncos. And if you look at their schedule, I honestly see a 5-12 team season loading up for them. I can see it definitely going off the rails for the Jets, Greg. To your point, I can see where the failure of things could happen. I do think that they have a little bit of a bump ahead of where the Broncos were with Russell Wilson. And why I would say that, Greg, is because they're going to have an offensive scheme there that Rodgers is going to know how to run. Rodgers, unlike Wilson, had proved at the Packers that he could run the West Coast offense and do those short throws, be accurate with that type of stuff. He's got a guy, for instance, in Garrett Wilson, who's going to get open on those kind of West Coast routes very often and make his job a lot easier, like when he had Devontae Adams at times. I think there's going to be some echoes of that a little bit. They've got a pretty good crew around. That offensive line is going to be a big part for me with the Jets. Can it stay healthy? Can the young, talented guys take steps forward if they are healthy? And if they do that, then they've got a chance. But if it's back to where it's been in recent years, I think they're definitely into that 5-12 range. Defense will probably do its part. But then they're also in the AFC. They're also in a tough division. Kelton says, I'm disappointed in their quarterback injuries. What the F with that nonsense? With the Niners stuff? Yeah. I come back to that Lance thing for me, Keldon. That's why I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think and what your thoughts are as a Niner fan, but it does feel to me like Shanahan wasn't on board with that pick wholly. And if he wasn't on board with it and you're giving up all those first-round picks when your head coach isn't on board with it, they've done a great job in drafting. They're doing a great job in player development. We come back again to that place. So this ain't all about shade on the Niners, but those players are going to be hella bitter 10 years from now, the Kittles and Fred Warners, who potentially go through a Hall of Fame career, but know that they never got over the mountaintop because the team was never able to properly address the quarterback position. And we're talking about address it in a way to have a functional guy who can just stay upright. It's the combination of those two things. But the Lance thing, the second it happened, I still remain in this place, Keldon. I think you were on the stream after the post game, but the second that Lance got that foot broken, I was just like, the fix is in. He ran him on 2 power runs. It's the second week of the season. You know, what are we doing? What are we doing? He's moving the team up the football field without having to run power runs from the quarterback position. It just seemed like you're going to get him broken at some point or another. And it seemed almost purposeful. Like, all right, let me get back to Garoppolo. Okay. Michael says, rest of the team needs to play at Gino's level. Now we got Bobby. Niners had their chance and they blew it. You had your chance and you blew it. It's maybe the possibility. I think the Niners are certainly still the favorites right now, but as I've said, and it's no shade, it sounds like I'm throwing shade at them, but you know, the window's sliding. It's sliding. When it shuts, no one knows. Michael, rebuild year and went to the playoffs. Thank you, Denver. Thank you, Denver, for that wonderful season. God, that was so much fun. Going to the playoffs and every week watching another Denver L draft pick gets just a little bit juicier. Herbicide says, I see Spoon switching to safety at some point. Don't know if we would make a better strong safety or a free safety. Yeah, I think it's a possibility, Herbicide. I do think it's definitely within reason. There's a lot of people that thought nationally of analysts, draft pundits, whatever you would call them, who believed that Witherspoon's eventual transition would be happening to straight safety. I think that considering the fact he's 190 pounds, you're probably looking more likely him at free safety than you would be looking at him at strong safety. Though we also have to acknowledge, Herbicide, that the safety's position is becoming more just safety than it is free or strong. Both those guys got to kind of do both things. So he would be, in that way, an example of the evolution of the position and where it's going by the requirements and what he can get accomplished from the position if you were to move him to free safety. But I do think that that's indeed where he will go. I also do feel like, though, Herbicide, he's going to have to first really fail out at first at corner. Then he's got to not have any impact at slot. And then eventually he gets to safety if it's going to be that road. So there's got to be a couple of things that he just shows he can do for them to get there. And then that doesn't mean that he'd be failing as a safety at that point, of course, Herbicide, but it just means I think that's where they would find the best positional value for him first in those 2 spots before, I think, going eventually to free safety. But it's well within reason, man. I could see it happening. Leland Kimball has been a member of the Hawks Nest for 10 long months. Thank you so much for that, Leland, all that support. Says, what's up, 12s? Magnum Brandon. I like Magnum Brandon. That's right. That's right. This is 357 Magnum. You're asking yourself, if I fired 5 or 6 shots? Well, in all the chaos, I forgot myself. My Clint Eastwood turned into Ronald Reagan. I don't know. Why, Nancy? D-Boy in the house. What's up, D-Boy? Brian Myers in here as well. It's good to see you. Hope you guys are doing well. Michael C., what's the new safety's name? Seahawks safety. His name is Julian Love. Maze Guru, I think our backfield will be scary good this year. Scary for quarterbacks, for sure. Oh, I think so as well. We're going to see the modern analytic folks and all those, they want to say, you build your new defense. This ain't the 70s. You got to build it back to front, not front to back. Schneider Company taking a page out of that book in a big way. I mean, they are march stepping right along with this modernized approach because that's how we built it, both from how much draft capital we put into the position to how much money we spent at the position to how much of a commitment we have to getting depth all across the board as well in this secondary. Megan says, thanks for the coverage, Breakdown B. Always gotten confused with them. I'm trying to not get too much into the nomenclature of all the terms and stuff as much as I can, Megan, or at least try to explain as I can and keep things in kind of layman. So I'm hoping I'm getting there on that. I want to do more of these breakdowns and stuff from the coverage standpoint because it does give, I think, a better view of everything outside in on this stuff, but appreciate you. Thank you. Riverside Love is very nice to have around. Insurance, can play 3 positions, really good tackler. It's a lot of bennies back there with him. And 2 years, $12 million is not the money line, for what you get from him for that versus money you're paying in other places at the safety position, which Diggs has been fine, but obviously with what you're getting with Adams, it's like no problem. He's making a third of what Adams is, at least on the APY. I agree, Michael. If Adams can stay healthy, we're going to be in great shape. Brian Myers' All-Star game was crazy for sure. Julio's 41 bombs was insane. He had that swing to where he knew just how strong enough he needed to swing to get it through the zone. Quick little strokes. And the pitcher was throwing some just like, I think it was little 4-seamers. But Julio knew right where it was going to run into. And boy, he was just locked in. That was fun. Brian Myers was big M's loss. Pitching coordinator leaves for Texas A&M. It's tough. I think a lot of some of this Myers too, Brian, has been, I think, with the Mariners getting the pitching they have back around and doing what it's done has been with the bullpen, DePoto really locking in on the right kind of guys to bring in the bullpen, young guys on the rise, the older guys made a little bit left in it. And then the starting pitching has really been built outside of Castillo, just going, and it's the high draft picks coming in. I think Logan, George, Hancock, those guys will all be high picks for the most part. So it's as much as I think that what they do good drafting wise, but it'll hurt. Mark Harpercorn, how you doing, man? It's good to see you in the chat. Do appreciate you. Megan, thank you for the $10 donation. Sorry, a little late on acknowledgement, but you got a couple donos here. Appreciate you on that. She says, thanks for the coverage breakdown, B. I'm a little upset today as my new Kraken jersey has come unstitched. It is fraying, but being here with you in the 12s helps. Well, man, that uni is so nice. I'd be the same way. I got one little stitch that breaks out. I'm going to be stomping my feet going, what the hell? Like I told you, that thing was like, it's been like, gold dressed or something, I guess. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like gold embroidered, pure raw gold embroidered into the stitching. It's a beautiful jersey though. Megan, thank you for another $10 donation. She says, question for you, B. Where does DeAndre Hopkins end up and why? The Pats, the Chiefs, or the Titans? I'm going to say that DeAndre Hopkins is going to end up on the New England Patriots. I think the Patriots end up giving the most money the Chiefs can't afford to give the kind of money the Patriots can. And so the Patriots went out because of that, because I think Hopkins, like Dalvin Cook, are trying to just, as much as anything, get the best payday. I don't think he'd go to the Titans because he doesn't know who's throwing him the ball. And at least with the Pats, he knows they're going to be doing a lot of intermediate stuff, work into his skill set. He knows Belichick will feature him enough, or even if it's a short-term deal of like 1 year, $10 million with the Patriots, it'll be enough for him to know he can go in there and prove it. I mean, it's that. I think he goes to the Chiefs. It's probably like a 1 year, $4.5 million salary or something. I don't think they can afford a lot. They probably have some kind of contract extension or another. They got to get done with somebody, and they're year 3 deep in now to the Mahomes deal, which, as good as it's been a deal, as nice as it is to help out the Chiefs, he's restructured it twice. It's still year 3 of a pretty major deal. So, I don't think they got the money to do it, but if he was smart, to me, Megan, he goes to the Chiefs. If it comes down to just, I'm getting a prove-it deal anyway, I'd go to the Chiefs. Because I can go in there and go win a Super Bowl and help my legacy out and go get a contract after the year. And players have done that. So I think that'd be the path I'd take if I was him. But everything I'm reading on the situation is that he wants to go get still paid. Like he had the quote of, I can still play to 37. He wants a 3-4 year deal, which I don't think he's getting. He didn't get anything more than 2 years. William Asabaku, how you doing, man? Go Hawks. Brian says, B, this is a great breakdown, man. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. I want to give a little clarity on it. Boy, it stood out to me when I was watching the show where the stats were presented on that of how much they ran it last year. I should have been paying more attention to that, quite frankly. Caught me off guard. But wanted to let you guys know, because I thought it was a very little interesting tidbit. Maze Guru says they really need to defend the swing pass to the running backs way better. That drove me nuts last year. I've got some unfortunate news, Maze. The downside, every defense has a downside. Every defense has a weakness. There is no perfect defense out there, of course. So in researching this quarter half coverage, the thing that did stand out to me that got mentioned over and over again is that the vulnerability is on throws to the flat. So running back throws to the flat, slow crossers back across the field where the coverage has already been ran off, and then the defender who's initially in coverage in his zone will leaves it, and then that coverage runs off to the backside, and then that guy's wide open on this little simple drag route. So it has some holes in it that smart quarterbacks and offenses are going to attack when they see and recognize the coverage. But they have to recognize the coverage. This isn't you running out quarter, half, 70, 80% of the time like cover 3. So the quarterback knows pre-snap, so he can do all of his processing pre-snap, and then post-snap it's just a matter of 1,000, 2,000, dunk. 1,000, 2,000, dink. It's one of those two things they're doing. So now they don't get to do that as much. They don't know if it's cover 3. They don't know if there's a press look. They don't know if there's maybe a man point you're running a little bit with it. They don't know if you're going just cover 1. Cover 1's usually going to have the man on the outside a lot of times. So they're not sure of where you're going with it at that point, which now you can run it and the vulnerabilities are there, but they're not as easily taken advantage of like your cover 3 that was so predictable. So I'm sorry, Maze, it's probably still going to be a part of what goes on down next year in that respect. We got to just rally the ball and limit those plays. Jacob Haas says, bro, I'm stuck at work. It's 6:00, man. It's Miller time. You know what I mean? You tell that boss, okay? Tell that boss you grab him by his little chicken neck, and you say, "Hey, listen, you son of a bitch. You listen to me. It is Wednesday in the middle of the summer. What are you doing to me?" And you just squeeze it just a little bit and then release at the end. And then just look at him dead eye. You'll let you off at that point. Michael YT says Quandre is going to be more healthy, means more big plays coming from him. 100% the case. And that was something, of course, I was leading into with my last thoughts in that video that I dropped yesterday. And it's not just something I'm emptily putting out there. I don't think you guys can, those who have been following me the last couple of years since Quandre's been here, channel's been up all that time. I don't think there's been one year where I hyped up this given year as the year where he's going to go off this season. This is a year, though, seeing how he transitioned to the new defense, seeing how now better that puts him in a position to go make plays like he made there against the Raiders, and understanding he's going to be a year healthier, understanding this is the most talented defense he has had here in Seattle since he arrived, and it's got the most depth, most protection, which is going to then allow him to maybe feel more like he's got the freedom out there to go do that. Then we got to the fact that if he just caught all those interceptions last year, he would have led the league in interceptions. And these weren't interceptions that were, he had no chance at them, but we're counting them. These are interceptions where he's got two hands right through his chest, happens to drop it. I don't think he's shown himself to be necessarily bad with his hands throughout his time here. It was just kind of freakish last year and probably a little bit of an example of him coming back from that injury and not everything being quite right. Maybe he's thinking about his foot on those kind of plays as much as anything else. And he got better as the year went along. He got stronger as the year went along. He seems like he's still got that chip on his shoulder. Go look at his Twitter today, where he's on it. You can feel the passion through what he's saying, and wanting that kind of respect. And this year, I think he can go get it. This year, I think he can really go and show you what he's capable of, because he goes out there and has that 7-8 interception kind of year from the free safety position. He'll finally be given his flowers, and people go, "Oh, okay, yeah, we've got to acknowledge what he's been doing here through these years." Remember that stat too I presented yesterday. I think it's one of the more eye-opening stats, is that we think about Earl Thomas as this playmaker and this ball hawk. And as I said in the video, many consider him the all-time best free safety in Seahawks history. I guess it depends on what you consider Kenny Easley, in my opinion, because Easley might be still my guy. But he played some strong and free, so it's a little harder with that. But Earl Thomas would get an interception for you once every 4.4 games. Oh, right? So, but then But then with Diggs, you get 1 every 3.2 games. So better than a game better as far as his frequency of getting interceptions. But he's just not considered quite in that realm of being ball hawk like he is. And I'm not saying he's on Earl's level. I'm not saying he's as good as Earl. Earl did a lot of other things that there's things Earl did that probably Quandre can't do. So far as that's how much he could cover center field, how much he could play center field like it was cover 2, essentially, in the way Earl played it. I don't think Quandre can quite do that all the time. He can do some shades of it. But I think he's going to be able to have a chance to make plays that even Earl didn't have a chance to make in this defense next year with this coverage, because there's more opportunity to jump routes and to pull the trigger and go after it and go get it, not just stay clean over the top. Those center field safeties can sometimes play their role a whole game, and if the offense never clips over the top, they're neutralized just because they're never in the play. They're never really being tested. They're keeping a key part of the defense because the quarterback will say, okay, stay down on my check, stay down on my short route. But they can spend a whole game just doing a whole lot of nothing at times and have done their job. Michael said they got a Richard Sherman jersey signed by Russell. That's cool. That's strong. Connor says, I honestly can't believe Diggs didn't make the ESPN top 10 safety list. I didn't either. But these lists are always pretty consistent in being kind of ridiculous with that. It takes a guy like Bobby to be like 7, 8 all pros before they'll finally put an inclusion of a Seahawk. They're very slow with that type of stuff. And as I said, that's why I want to do that Diggs video too. It's kind of why I've been wanting to kind of feature some of these players in recent weeks, be it Kenneth Walker, Lockett, guys that aren't, I think, getting as much pub as they should and talked about as much as they should, not to just appreciate the players, but also in the understanding that these players are all part of what makes this team dominant next year if it can get to that place, and why it's reasonable to think that that's a possibility, because you have all of these different parts and pieces of this team, and on top of just showing the nature of being a good team on top of it. It's not just individuals playing for themselves, that this is what should provide the confidence for this upcoming season and hope for this upcoming season. Michael YT says everyone's chirping except for Woolen. He was starting to talk a little bit today. Nino started giving him some hell for it online. But he was talking a little bit today too as well. I like it. I like our players feeling like they're not being appreciated, man. That underdog feeling, man, that's a good one to tap into. And the survey with ESPN Brian was ridiculous. Diggs is absolutely a top 10 safety in this league. It's more of a question of, is he a top 5, not is he a top 10? At least, especially a free safety. But I mean, it's not like the game's also filled with a lot of guys playing amazing safety position stuff. Micah says, by the way, Sherman started his beef with Revis because Revis started talking trash about him on Twitter when Sherman was doing an interview to people about who's the best. Revis was butthurt. That's correct. You have a correct way of putting that together on that. And sort of, Sherman didn't lash out at first, but Revis kind of did a little, but it did turn into that at that point. It was an interesting debate. And that one was all about, he doesn't travel. He doesn't travel. At least we don't have to hear about that again, because that won't be a part of this debate, because that Sauce doesn't travel either. D-Boy, Brandon, with Tariq Woolen being in his second year now, with more videos and game play out on him now, and teams learning his style of play, do you see him having a better, equal, or bad year this season? If he stays healthy, D-Boy, I think he has a better year this year. The video stuff and how to go after a guy and how to take advantage of him, that's certainly a part that can affect players. I think that there are other positions, D-Boy, that are going to be more worsely impacted. A running back who has a penchant for cutting back in this type of situation, or, who, if it's this call and this kind of run, he's always going to bounce it outside. I think that's going to get a little more easily predictable, right? Because it's a position that's more doing an actionable thing, whereas cornerback is more times reacting to what's happening in front of you. Could they find that like double routes and catching him guessing at times you can take advantage of that? That's certainly a possibility. But no, I think with his level of talent, D-Boy, that he is so good. And remembering too, this was a guy that was only playing cornerback 2 years in college. And now this next year, in his third year last season, he went out and absolutely played outstanding. That's a guy who did it last year without really leaning on technique or fundamentals. I mean, players kept saying it time and time again when they were talking about it. They'd be shaking their head. They'd be going, boy, he doesn't even know what he's doing out there, and he's doing it. I don't get it. I don't understand how he's so fast and long. He can just run with anybody that but he's operating off instincts. So I was like, well, now that he doesn't have to operate as much off instincts, he's going to be able to be better. He's going to be able to recognize stuff. All the more opportunities he knows when he can take, like Quandre did in that cut that I showed, D-Boy, where he's able to then jump that route because he knows he's going to be clean in doing so. DJ Jimenez, what's up, Brandon? What's up, Megan? What's up, DJ? It's good to see you in the house. Appreciate you jumping on in to the house. Connor says, I honestly think it's more draft status than anything. People are hooked on high draft picks having good seasons. I agree. I think draft pedigree just carries weight in the NFL in weird ways. And if it does it in ways which I've kind of been recently kind of exposed to, being there was a stat I showed a couple weeks ago talking about Kenneth Walker, where you're drafted as a running back will dictate how high a frequency of stacked boxes you face. So you're a first round pick, you're going to get more stacked boxes than the guys the 5th or 6th round pick. Maybe that's a kind of a no-duh thing, but it even works for second round. Like first rounders even beat out second rounders in the amount that they get stacked boxes in recent history. And so there are those weird stats where you go, boy, that seems almost like the NFL teams are almost into the narrative of the player where he's picked a bit. But this works for the guys getting paid too, where you'll see first round guys that still can go back into that next contract and go get paid. And then those guys that have been more of the developing 3rd, 4th round guy who's really come on, it can be a little bit tougher. So it's odd, but that stuff does carry in a couple different directions. Mike White, he's got 11-6, 12-5, Space 12-5, 13-4 says Herbicide. If we sweep the Niners, oh man, sweep the Niners and 13-4. Chef's kiss, Herbicide. Michael, what nice. We also retained Drew Lock at number 2. That's a nice insurance policy. It is. You got some protection at quarterback, and there's not a lot of teams that have that, where you have a guy that could legit come in and have some talent who could potentially have some upside to play very close to, or if not right alongside the line of where Gino's playing at in his productivity. Lazy Dog says, my bet's the over on wins. I like it, Lazy. Money where your mouth is on that one. What is our over? I think we're at 8. I want to go lay that bet too. I wish Washington let gambling go down so I could do some gambling. Connor says, I honestly wonder if Witherspoon will get a similar hype that most high draft picks get, though. NFL already let him off. They're already left him off their all rookie team predictions. Well, if Witherspoon had some cool nickname, like Sauce, maybe it'd be more in the minds of folks. I joke, but it's like, look, Sauce got taken at 4, and then Derek Stingley got taken at 12. How much are you hearing about Derek Stingley much last year? And obviously Sauce had a much better year than Stingley did, but I don't think he's going to get the hype even if he went out there and balled well. I think he'd be similar in position of Tariq, where he's playing in the Pacific Northwest. He was a guy that kind of was a later guy coming onto the scene there with Illinois. He wasn't a 5-star guy coming out of high school. These things, again, go back to narratives. These things hold and lock in, and it takes a long time to get out from under that viewpoint of things. Trent Cybots, you drafting Seahawks D in fantasy? No, man, I wouldn't go for a defense that has an explosive offense on the other side of it that's going to keep these other opposing offenses having to score against us 24/7. You got to go find those defenses that, going to have their blows and whatnot. I wouldn't be anti-Hawks D. I was running some fantasy football simulators last night, draft simulators, kind of killing it. I'm not going to say I was building, I'm going to be in the Hawks Nest fantasy this year, so I had to prep up, I had to prep up just a little bit. Mark's guys going 14-3. God, I love your guys' optimism. Let's go. Jacob says, I truly believe Kyle wanted Mac and not Trey. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Jacob, because it does seem to me like something, and I'd love to hear Keldon's thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thought. And so Keldon says, I don't know why they would have traded up for Mac when they already had Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a fair point. I guess I would contend to that, Keldon. By that point, Shanahan was kind of done with Jimmy. And like he's spending good money on Jimmy. Like when they brought him in, they gave him that new contract and he was costing he wasn't like top of the market, but he also wasn't giving him a discount for being a quarterback that was limited. And he got injured all the time. So I guess the argument would be, Keldon, like I'll bring in this guy that's going to is like a little bit of a marginal improvement over Jimmy Garoppolo, who then I know will stay healthier and he's going to cost less by 2/3 of the price of what we're paying for Jimmy Garoppolo. So we can build a better other team around at that point. That would be just my wonder with it. But it does seem like with Trey, Kyle, in the way he's talked about him, certainly hasn't just like rode him and drug him, but he just doesn't also talk about him like a quarterback you talk about as the guy that's going to be the guy leading your team, running this thing through. It's just kind of like, he's in the mix. It's kind of, that's in my mind, that's how it feels when Shanahan's talking about Trey Lance. Herbert says, Willis, should we go for him? Because there's, of course, rumors that maybe the Titans are going to out and out release Malik Willis or put him on the open trade market. I got to stay firm on this one. Herbicide in my pre-draft evaluation of Willis, I believe, is still where I stand on him. He was a really rough prospect coming out who was a very long way away from being ready. He's got a lot of stuff to clean up, almost too much, and I don't believe he's also a very young prospect anymore. His ability to move around and scramble was really overstated and overviewed by people coming out. I just come back to Willis going, I don't think that there's a lot there to feel like let's invest in this for the future. And that's why the Titans are cutting him. That's why the Titans went back to go get a quarterback so immediately after drafting Willis last year, is they're telling you in general terms here that the guy just doesn't have it. There's other quarterbacks I think I'd rather see about taking a flyer on than him. Yeah, Jacob, we're thinking the same lines on this. Your response on the Jimmy thing was mine, exactly like mine. Good thoughts on that. Ryan, think about this. A lot of people didn't have a high ceiling for the Legion of Boom in the early days. The team we have now has a much higher ceiling than the Legion of Boom did. Can Pete repeat the Legion of Boom? It would be a masterwork. It would be a finishing coup de grace on an amazing defensive career, an amazing coaching career. Because if he was to rebuild anything into a secondary place that was like that team, he would not be doing it on the back of just simply rebuilding it in the same way he had once done before. He'd be rebuilding it with different type of players, with a different type of scheme, with a different type of philosophy from maybe even a defensive standpoint in certain respects. Not that all of the old would go away, but that there'd be a lot that different and new to get to this point of greatness. The old Legion of Boom team, I was trying to think about the investment. The old Legion of Boom team was similar like this team and the investment you put into it. You paid Cam, you paid Earl, you paid Richard. Cam and Richard were 2 5th-rounders. Brandon Browner was basically an undrafted rookie free agent. Byron Maxwell was a 5th-rounder. You got a 5th-rounder in Tariq Woolen, former 5th-rounder in Quandre Diggs that you paid. Jamal Adams was a top 10 pick. Devon Witherspoon's a top 10 pick. So there's 2 top 10 picks in the secondary. There is that. And that's different from Legion of Boom, probably to your point, Ryan, of being, at least on paper, to have a higher ceiling. It has to come together. They don't have necessarily that continuity and chemistry. We don't know if they've got that quite yet that team did that really separated them. But from a talent standpoint on paper, I guess, yeah. Keldon says, yeah, Jimmy gets hurt, but that's certainly not exclusive of Jimmy. I could see Matt getting injured on the Niners too. If I was Shanahan, Keldon, on this, I see where you're and completely understand where you're coming from, but I would have looked at it like this. I don't throw the ball as it is. I run an offense that protects you as a quarterback so much by being able to not only manufacture very easy throws for you, easy completions for you, but also I don't have a high volume passing attack. So I don't put you in a lot of peril very often. So the few times that you do get hit, the few times that you do get sacked, I need you tough enough to bounce back up from that. And the thing with it, Keldon, is remember with Jimmy, the man's been questioned by multiple former teammates as far as his toughness is concerned. And some of this comes back to not just merely being about Jimmy Garoppolo being an injury-prone guy, but a guy that literally former teammates of him call him a bitch because he didn't show more toughness. And so I think that the injury things, a couple things fold there with Shanahan and maybe his view of it at that time. It doesn't guarantee Mac would have been more healthier, but remember, Keldon, with that, from my point on this would be, I know you're responding more to Jacob than mine on this. I've got a guy less likely to be as injured, younger player, more cheaper. You know, he has money left over to maybe reinforce with a good backup behind Jimmy rather than having to go with Mullins or Purdy, who Purdy worked out. But I'm sure at that time, Shanahan was like, I don't want to just go to a 7th rounder now if I have to bail on Jimmy, but I can't get a high quality quarterback in here to back up Jimmy at that point because we put so much investment into Jimmy. I could see him really have leaned to where he went to Mac, man. I really can. Grug, it sucks that everyone favors the Jets fans on this because PFF has the reputation of being the holy grail of NFL stats. Meanwhile, it's actually hot garbage, and they can't read coverages. There's definitely some folks got that opinion of it. I do have myself somewhere in the middle. I certainly don't hold them as holy grail, but I definitely reference them. And I do think that they're worth a certain measure of weight. But you're right, holy grail shouldn't be leaned on as the only thing to necessarily determine a player. And I'm probably guilty of mentioning it too. It's an easy way to shorthand a player at times. But probably not always the most fairest way with not bringing in other factors. Greg says Pro Football Reference is better, even though it's not perfect. That's where we come down. I don't think any of them is perfect. I like Pro Football Reference too, Greg. I think that's a great example of one doing some good stuff in this analytical realm. It's separate from PFF. This is where we come to as well, where I say, utilize all this that we have at our hands, right? Utilize PFF, utilize Pro Football Reference, utilize the next gen advanced stats. It's hard. It's more data. It's more stuff to try to throw into the blender and spit out a smoothie that makes some sense. But I think that the more data you get, the more clearer you get to the truth of a situation or the answer of a situation. Brian says secondary is going to be great, but not Legion of Boom great. It's hard to reach that mark, man. And there's a lot of things that made that team. I agree. 5-layer cheese. Chat, do you think a Super Bowl window is going to open for us? Also, what do you guys think the future holds for Geno? I do think the Super Bowl window is going to open for us, 5-layer cheese. I don't know if it's this year because you have such a young team, and it's hard from an NFL historical perspective to get a young team, no matter how talented, up into the big show. They usually need to have a little bit of that maturation process, but they got the talent. I think that Geno Smith is going to be your quarterback here and now and into the long-term future. I think that his play is sustainable. I think that he has done everything all the way down the checklist of items of things you'd want from your quarterback that you are wondering if you can support, back up, make your guy. He has given you that from a work ethic standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from the fact that he's not taking every last dollar bill he can and putting the team over a barrel, which in itself, that one thing can get quarterbacks into a position where a team can have a very productive quarterback they clip and leave just because of the high cost. And Geno has shown a lot of intelligence in his understanding of the situation with that. And I think that the fruits of that are going to bear to him a longer time here in Seattle, a second win to his career, and maybe potentially even the ultimate success with the type of team that they're able to build around him. Paul Susia, hey, all go Hawks. We are unbeaten this year. We are unbeaten in 2023 so far. Forgot about that. Connor, I think a comparison between Diggs' coverage numbers versus ESPN's top 10 safeties from last 2 seasons. Diggs was second in snaps, first in targets, first in yards, third in TDs, second INTs, third in rating. In a good way, right, Connor? Second in snaps, first in targets. I think that's, I would say that's good on the good side in the way you mean that. It's a little unclear on that, but I think you meant that as that he was in the good side of that on the coverage numbers. He's great coverage. You talk to me a little bit about the tackling, and I'll listen to you and go, okay, you got a point. But when it comes to coverage and what Diggs has been asked to do, understanding it's his responsibility so often since he's come to this defense to stay in single high situations, cover 1, cover 3, that he's not often in a place to always go make a play like that Raiders play I showed. But that's not on him. That's not his fault. Doesn't mean he isn't doing his job and doing it well. Ryan says, yeah, I guess it's pretty hard to be better than the best ever. It is pretty tough to do that. Micah says, this offseason definitely made me respect Pete and Schneider more. This is not something I'd say 3 to 4 years ago. Me neither. They've turned around not just the fate of this team, not just the rebuild, but also I think the mentality of a lot of us Hawk fans and their viewpoint of them and where it was going over time. And understanding that, as they've done, and I've pointed out in a show, I think about a month ago, that there is a laundry list of things that built up with time. It would happen to any organization that had the same general manager and coach in the same place and had a really lot of early success. That early success is going to breed you out to not want to change your ways at all, that to stay to your philosophy. But sometimes you've got to evolve with time. Football's ever changing, ever moving. It doesn't stay stagnant, and you've got to move with it. And they showed a lot of hesitancy to do that for many different years. And then they finally chose to do so, and they did whole hog. And in doing whole hog, they've turned this thing around that much faster because of it. They've gotten themselves this closer to becoming a contender because they didn't hold on to the old. They stopped that. They tore it all away and went, okay, let's go to scratch and get back to our base philosophies here and away from all of these old ways of going about it. He says the Jets are overhyped. John Francis says, tell me about the addition of BT Jordan. Will he help the pass rush? We'll have to see how these guys look in the way that they are going about their pass rush throughout the course of the season, John. I think that here's the good news with that is that though that's kind of a harder thing to gauge because you're not actually hearing as much or knowing as much about the impact that's coming into play. What I mean by that is that you've had years here for about 4 or 5 where you've had defensive linemen come through here and their development in the pass rush side of things has not improved with time. That in a lot of ways they've kind of remained as very, very close to the same player they were when they walked in the door. And I can give you examples of this. Rasheem Green, LJ Collier, Darrell Taylor's been a little bit like this for that time period. There's some more examples that I'm just completely blanking on here on top of that, but it's something that's been a hole in the game of the coaching staff. And I think it's good that they recognized it. This is part of the thing of lauding Coach Carroll and lauding John Schneider is that, mistakes are going to get made. No coaching staff's perfect. No general manager is perfect. No front office is perfect. But, do you still continue to make the same mistakes over and over again? Or do you look to correct those mistakes when they rear their ugly head? So you go, okay, let's not talk about the blame game and who's at fault and what's at fault. Here's the problem. Our young pass rushers are not developing. They're coming in here and they're staying in a stagnated place. Who can we go out there and get that understands how to teach pass rush? Who can we get out to get these guys better? And they're from a technician standpoint. Well, BT Jordan's the best out there. I mean, we'd have to pay him a lot of money and, we'd have to really blow him out of the water. But I mean, that guy's worked with everybody in the book. I could give you a huge name, John, a huge list of names of really great pass rushers that have worked with this guy. And so that the team went, okay, I'm sure they said, let's throw the bag at him. We'll say, okay, you're going to make double what you make as a private consultant working with us this year, just our team. Okay, bet. I'm on board. And he comes over and, hopefully he can teach more. How will we see it? I think this is where it will be. I'll give you a couple examples, John, of a few places you can specifically look towards. With Darrell Taylor, do you see any counter to the inside developing? Is he just running around the arc and just trying to always be quicker than the tackle across from him? Does he have any counters he's bringing into play? Or is he just going with the one first move he has out the book? So if he wants to go to a rip move, is it he goes to the arc edge, whips out the rip move, and then he's done? Or is he starting to develop counters? Is he starting to chain moves together? Are you seeing Taylor at times set things up? Crash inside a couple times to get to that outside edge, get them from jump setting as much out, that you start to, if you get better to your inside. It's going to be as much hands in that, the technique with the hands, the use, the chaining together moves, things you'd expect a pass rush specialist to help out young defenders with, and things that have been holes in the game. Who's the last Seahawks defender that has come through here that's been a technician with their hands? Uchenna is kind of that way, but he had that coming into here. I can't remember the last guy who's come through here in recent years that was a rookie came through that you said, oh, wow, that guy's a master with his hands. Rip move, swim move, long arm stiff. Not really a lot of guys. So I think that's where you'll be able to see it, John, is those young rushers, Boye Mafe, is he starting to show some more understanding in this pass rush game? He was a little rough last year, a little raw, didn't kind of understand, bull in a china shop. He's moving all over the place. He's got some strength to him, but doesn't necessarily have an exact plan in what he's doing. But you'll be able to tell. You'll be able to tell because this has been such a wide open hole for us in recent years that if it starts to even close a little bit, it should have a pretty big impact on the team generating pressure and sacks with it. Callie Tangerine says, did B already discuss Luke Wilson on KJ's podcast? Sorry, I'm late. No worries, Tangerine. It's good to see you in the house, man. And I talked about it a little bit a couple weeks ago. It was a real eye-opening podcast. KJ Wright's been really good with the shows he's been doing over there, and he's asking questions, and they're talking about subjects that are not stuff that we've heard referenced and discussed this way. And I think Luke had a couple of tidbits he dropped that were very interesting. The Super Bowl play and having a fullback dive for Marshawn Lynch in the ready and not calling upon it. The animosity that exists after the play and how much it reverberated for years afterwards, not just player to player, but player to coach, coach to coach. His reference about how the team looked when he came back for a final time and that they were practicing in their worst manner that he had ever seen. I think that speaks a little bit about that thing I was just talking about where you're 9-10 years deep in as an organization into a place and you've had certain things grow a little crusty. There's a little bit of mold on your bread. And that showed, I think, in that kind of practice that you hear him reference part of why he retired and saying, yeah, I'm not going to go out here if this team ain't going to do anything this year. So I thought these interviews are great. Luke dropped some great tidbits, talking from the heart, and the way he explained it. He had another story like Averill did about just support he got from Schneider on that when he wanted to retire. It was a great interview, man. But, the Super Bowl play is brutal because it does come up a lot with KJ stuff, and it's going to. But you had the fullback dive with Marshawn in particular is just, it's gut punch. It's gut punch. Keldon, I was here during the game, and I said before that play that Lance runs too much quarterback power. I believe I remember you doing that, Keldon. You know me, I'm bad a little bit with certain memory things like that, but I'm glad you're on the same page with me. It's ridiculous he's doing it. And Keldon, there's a Shanahan, you've seen it. There's the Shanahan interview of him interviewed a couple of years ago before Lance was even drafted of talking about why you'd want to use quarterbacks in those kind of runs because they can't see the hits coming. It's like he had learned this lesson. This is where we come back to I don't think he's on board with him because, Shanahan's not dumb. And he's not going to give this interview where he talks about how you can't risk your quarterback in this way. And then 3 years later, when he gets his shiny new top 5 quarterback that he hasn't had since Robert Griffin, who in that interview, that's his reference for why he has to stop running the quarterback power run. Cause he says, yeah, when I was in Washington, we got Robert Griffin in there and he could do so many things with his legs and we became too infatuated by that and we ran him too much on that. And I can't do that as much in the future. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. Bop, 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 bop. Griffin's career is over because of that injury. He's never the same player after that injury. And yet here comes Lance and you're going to run him on those powers. Oof. I think stuff gets petty sometimes, Keldon. That's what I'm saying. I think stuff sometimes gets petty between front offices and coaching staffs. And they will do some stuff like that that's that's borderline. What do? You going to play it that way? You ain't going to be happy about the quarterback. I didn't take your McCorkle. And so now you're going to run my uber talented young kid right up the middle until you break him. Come on, Mike. I swear to God, if we had a lie detector test, Keldon, and I could put the GM under the lie and Shanahan, I swear this would be confirmed to some manner and degree. Ryan, I want to see an Aaron Rodgers butt fumble. I do too. That'd be awesome. Those guys get older. They start like Brady did, forgetting how many. Are we third, fourth down? Is it fifth? Do we have a fifth down? What day is it? 5-layer cheese. Are the Rams or Cards going to be any good? I know Kyler's hurt. I've got them both in heavy rebuild mode right now, 5-layer cheese. Rams got a little bit of, Cardinals have a little bit of a chance because they're starting to get their line built right, and a good line can, kind of keep a team in things, especially if it can control the clock. But both teams are pretty thoroughly in a place of rebuild. I would expect them both to be top 5 worst teams in the National Football League next year. And the Rams are starting 17 rookies. And I've heard too, they're trying to offload Stafford. So there's rumors right now that they're trying to move. I've heard rumors of maybe moving Stafford, maybe being open to moving Donald. I don't know if that's the case, but those rumors are out there. Greg says, say Reek plays for a while at corner, maybe 10 years. Do you think that Reek can take Rod Woodson route and switch to safety and play a few more seasons that way? I think it's going to be very hard for him to do so, Grug, because he's coming as a receiver convert to the cornerback position, which is already one that's going to take you a little bit of time to become a tackler. And maybe he develops in the way Sherman did in coming in and being kind of rough and then getting to be one of the best tacklers at corner in the league. Maybe he makes that transition. He's got the length. He's got a big enough body style to be a good tackler for what he could. But the receiver mentality is kind of a receiver mentality, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, those guys I don't think are ever going to be, like Deion Sanders had the receiver mentality. He didn't want to tackle. And I don't think Reek's in that same role. Reek's a willing tackler. But you go to safety, free safety or strong safety, for him, it's really, that's going to be the question for me if you were to move him there. It's a long way down the line. He could play it. It's possible. But, Sherman always said that he was eventually thought he was going to transition to safety, and he ended up just retiring. So I think once you get to 10 years in the league, Reek will have, at that point, probably had 3 contracts he's signed. He's probably made $200, $300, $400 million, whatever it is by that point. Does he want to come back for a couple of years to play safety where now he has to start banging heads and tackling at a higher frequency than he does as a corner? Probably not. I'd say no. Mr. Isaac, man, I am so excited to see this young secondary develop. Our O-line, running backs, all young and chock full of talent. This is an exciting time to be a Seahawks fan. Boy, is it ever. And very, very beautifully put. It's a great time, man. You're on your rise. You're on your ascent. It's a sweet, sweet taste. Not like that bitter taste when you're right at the end of your run. You've had a couple of years. Gotten to a Super Bowl. Gotten to conference championships. Beaten Green Bay, but you just can't get over the hump. That's brutal. That's the brutal stuff. Callie says, you need to take this parody show on the road, especially walking. I would if I could, but I don't know. It might get old for people. I see them. I know it'd be fun, though, if we did. This is Christopher Walken talking about the NFL today. I don't know if Seahawks will be good, but Niners, no, just can't. Nowhere where there's that much wine. It's true. I'll do it at some point. I've thought about doing a little parody channel. We're just having fun stuff like that. Going crazy with it. I can't quite figure out how to wind it into the Seahawks lore as much. Herbicide says, what's more valuable for a team, safety or corner? Corner. Safety's in that place where, you know how they do those things, Herbicide, where they show the stock lines of a value of something through years, and you go through and it's like an animated stock line. And so for years, you would have seen here the safety position kind of already low, and then it's starting to get even lower and lower with running backs and middle linebackers as these devalued positions. So I do think it's starting to now get a little bit of a climb and it's on the back of the split safety look stuff where now you're not just a pure free safety. You're not just a pure strong safety. You have to do both of the roles now. And so that brings your value up because of the requirements of the position. But it's still a far cry from cornerbacks. Still a far cry, I think, maybe not a far cry, but let's just say there's a $10 million difference if you want to put it to an average per year. Your best safety in this league, Jamal Adams, is making $17.5 million per year. I don't know the exact numbers right now, but I would imagine that the best corner in this league right now is probably making $26, $27 million per. So it's still being viewed. NFL is telling you kind of with that, what's the highest, what's the more valuable position to them. Let me look it up here. Look up position, play roles. So I guess I have to look this up. I'll have to look this up offline. It'd be interesting to check it out, but I would guess that you're looking high 25s, 26, 27 for whoever they've got. What's Denzel? Look at Denzel Ward here. Well, maybe it's only like 4 or 5 million. Maybe overstay a little bit. So it's getting better. It's going up there. Double R says, Cowboy fans stopping by again. The voiceover, not bad. Hope everyone in the chat stays safe and blessed. What's up, Double R? Good to see you in the house, man. Stay blessed as well. Hope you're doing well. Vector 7 says, hell yeah, I get to listen to the Nest while doing some chores. It's the best way to do some chores, man. And as Mr. Isaac says, please do hit that like button if you could for me, folks. Subscribe up too if you're not already subscribed up, but do that for me, please. Megan with a $5 donation. Thank you, Megan. Sorry, again, late on the dono acknowledgement. I was just getting through the chat there. 20 players scouted thus far. None jumping out just yet. Anyone you're looking at nose tackle? In the draft as of yet, Megan, I haven't quite got to the defensive tackles yet myself in the draft. I've been a little behind on doing any of my kind of film work on the upcoming year for D tackles. But I do have a couple guys that I'm looking through from Rook Aurora, Tariq Williams, Tyler Davis, Brandon Dorless, Micah Wingo, Dante Corleone. That can't be a real name, is it? Nazir Stackhouse, Tivandre Sweat, Callan Bullock. A couple of guys in there that I'm going to be taking a look at. Defensive line. Chris Jenkins, Michigan kid, will be a guy I'll be looking at. Though he probably is gone by the time Seahawks pick if what you're hearing about him's true. So I just haven't had a chance yet, Megan. But I'm going to be getting to I really want to start even beginning on these prospects for college just to start getting ahead of this stuff. Because it's brutal when you get to that draft season and you're trying to get through 300 names in 50 days. It's a lot of tape. Megan says, with another $2 donation, says 11 to 12 wins if all goes well. I'm hoping, Megan. I'm hoping. I love the 12 wins is where I'm going to be firmly at right now. But there's definitely a fluctuation point to this season. Young roster, defensive line you're not sure about. I feel solidly you built everything up well around it. But that defensive line is such a big question mark as it stands. And the team doesn't seem to believe so. But, man, it's hard not to feel like it is a little bit of a worrisome spot as we sit right now. Megan with another $5 donation. Megan, thank you for all the donations tonight. I appreciate you so very much. She says, ask Howard Cosell how he feels about our coach, please be, and thank you. It's often talked about in NFL lore, coaches being at the end of their rope. You have the eminent Tom Landry with the Dallas Cowboys, 1988. At the end of a beautiful, magical long run, quelled by the young upstarts, Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones. He was put out to pasture like so many coaches before him have been sent. Don Shula left, pushed out the door when it was determined he could no longer put a running game together, nor an equivocal defense. So many of these coaches, told their time has come, told they are too old, never to return. Well, not the effervescent, ever youthful Coach Pete Carroll. He has shown not only does he have a second life with his USC dominance, not only did he have a third life with his LOB dominance and world title waving ways. But again, he shows you now, this elder coach, this man who knows no end, has now a fourth wind he is providing. One can only wonder when this sunset will truly commence. Appreciate you, Megan. D-Boy says, Brandon, can you give us your first, second, third, fourth place in the NFC West? Oh, this is an easy one, D-Boy. It's an easy one. You got usually some tough questions for me. This one's an easy one. So we got number one. I'm gonna give it to the Niners. I'm gonna give it to the Niners. I guess they're probably in first place. Look, they're in first place. I think they're just at the end of that window this year. I think it starts to close after the season, but I do think it's just there's a little draft still coming through it. So I'd put them at like 13 wins. I'm gonna put us at 12 wins. I think we both dominate our division 4-0 within our division, which helps to put up the overall record a little bit higher. With the 12-13 wins is 1-2 in the division, kind of like it did back in 13. I do think we're second place, 12 wins. I think the Rams and the Cardinals are going to struggle to win 7 games collectively. Cardinals are third place. Fourth place team is the Rams because they're playing so many rookies, D-boy, and they leaned even harder than the Cardinals did into their rebuild. Like the Cardinals did kind of equal what the Rams did. They would have had to have like just dumped Kyler Murray for nothing. They came close with a few of their moves, but they didn't go quite as hard. I think the Rams are really, really looking at Caleb Williams real hard. And if they could get that number 1 overall pick, all of what they've done this year has been well worth it in their sacrifice. Ryan Ball says, just as Walken needs more cowbell, Brandon needs more likes. Got a fever. Only prescription is more likes. Listen, Ryan Ball, I see you, Ryan, and thank you. I need help. Subs, where you at? I know you're watching. Hit the button. It doesn't cost you anything. Now, please do it. You know you want to. You know you need to. Do what I'm telling. It's only going to help you out. You'll sleep good. Dream a little dream. You know you will. Ryan, that pitching coordinator worked with all 4 young pitchers now in the rotation. They said it's a terrible loss. I don't disagree on Meyer, Brian. I don't disagree. It is going to hurt. It's always hard to, I guess if the pitching staff just completely goes into the tank, it won't be hard to see, the feeling of the loss at that point. I'm with you on that. But you do have talented pitchers too on the other side. That was just my point as well, is that these guys definitely could have been helped. And they are also very talented pitchers who could have a couple of pitching coaches that helped them to take those steps forward. It's not as much a worry for me, I guess I would say, Brian, because at the end of the day, the team has put so much in resources to prospects that are pitchers, and they get this, and this isn't an issue for the team, and it hasn't been really an issue pitching-wise for a team in a while, really. The issue comes back to hitting right now and getting a lineup that can sustain enough runs to take advantage of the pitching. You also still play in a park that's really advantageous for young pitchers and helping them, in my opinion, to develop. It does the inverse for hitters, but that's the yin and yang of it, is it's going to help one side, not help as much the other side. This is why, in my opinion, Brian, you've seen so many young hitters come through Safeco. I'm just calling it Safeco. I'm so tired of changing these names and stuff. You've seen these hitters come through, young hitters that can't. Dustin Ackley just never even. Dustin Ackley types like a spray the ball around kind of hitter, but just can't ever really develop into the stadium. So it's going to hurt, but I don't think that they're necessarily now sunk or like this. There's no, that there's no way to mitigate the loss a little bit. Steele, who does everyone think is going to be the best rookie? The one that everyone, dang, I didn't expect that, kind of like Woolen and Walker. Ooh, good question. Ooh, good. Very good question. Not an easy answer on who I see coming in and being able to do that. God, I know all the players in this draft, and I'm just not thinking of anybody that comes. Let me look at the thing. I got my deal here. I'm going to give you my 2 names. I'm going to go defense here more than offense. But I'll give you my 2 names because I don't really have an offensive guy that stands out to me that I would go to necessarily. Didn't feel as much on this offensive class as hot to trot. So I'll stay just defense. And the first guy's obvious for me on this is going to be Will Anderson. I think he got a little bit dinged through the post-draft process by some in their viewpoint of him. Team, to the point you had certain analysts insisting he wasn't going to be like the second or third edge off the board, and he ended up being the first guy off the board. So I think Will Anderson is is definitely that guy that for me is going to come out and be very impactful from day one for that Texans defense. Sidney Brown for the Eagles is a guy I long loved in the draft process, who I think has some star qualities to him potentially as a player. I could be just missing it on this kid, but there was something about the way he played the game that I really liked and jumped out to me. So those would be my two guys that I would go to. And I was trying to think of a dark horse I could give you offensively, man, but that's tough. I mean, that's the tough one for me. There's not a lot of guys offensively to jump. It was just a weaker draft offensively speaking. I mean, a Dalton Kincaid, who's such a pass catching tight end, could come in and get a lot of touches early on. He could be a guy not talked about as much. But JSN's probably as good as anyone. That's a guy that, I mean, if I'm looking at any of the receivers in this draft that I could pencil in for 60 to 70 catches and 750 yards, 800 yards receiving, really feels like JSN's probably a guy I could do that with. Greg says, do you know when we can expect that Woolen video? Yes. I'm going to publish it. We've got training camp starting on the 27th, so I wanted to just get within like 10 days of it. Just the one thing you're seeing with some of the videos, and it's starting to kind of ramp up now a little bit, is the reason I'm waiting on a Grug is I just want to have a lot of videos in the pipe. So I've got a lot of shorts I'm working on right now. I'm trying to get some other videos. The goal is to try to get as much kind of consistent content going and making sure I'm getting the consistent content going when the iron is at its hottest to strike. So when you're in the depths of June, you're in early July, you don't quite have all the eyeballs on things. And so when you release a video, you know, you're at that point going to potentially have a little bit of less of the viewing of the traffic. And when you drop this stuff, you want within the first 24 hours, things to be kind of cooking to keep the views on it going. So I'll definitely be getting that one, getting that one out published. If you want, you can reach out to me on Twitter too. I don't mind sending you the link to that video. But I'm waiting a couple more days to get us inside that time period where we're getting us a little closer to training camp. And you start to get a little bit more of the traffic cooking with the folks getting back into their football fix, so to speak. Brian Myers' hot take, rookie that gets good fast, Bradford. Ooh, I love that hot take. That'd be fantastic if he did, man. You get Bradford coming in here and playing league average in his first year with what you got on the rest of the line. That would be amazing. But he's got the goods. He's got the length, size, strength, ability to move in space. Everything you want in this offense for an offensive lineman to provide, he gives it. Now it's just about getting him technically correct. D-Boy, Brandon, would you rather the Seahawks have a 9-8 season and make it to the wild card, loss in the wild card, get first and third round picks, or make it to the Super Bowl and lose by 3 points in a close game? I would rather for the latter. I would rather for the latter and make it to the wild card last night and get first round 3 pick, or get the third pick in the first round. I think is what you're saying, D-Boy. 9-8 season, I get the third pick in the first round, or I go to the Super Bowl and lose by 3. I think the Super Bowl would be more important. A young team understanding, finding success, learning how to win. And if you're getting to the place of getting to a Super Bowl and getting within 3 points, you have a team that's learned how to win, has understanding what it's going to take. And you've also still created that hunger for that young team to where you have a team that's going to be wanting to chomp at the bit to get back in there. That this isn't the beginning of what they're doing. This is the start of what they're doing. This is them setting the tone for what's to come. Whereas with the 9-8 season, even getting that top 3 pick, you're still not sure about this team, knowing if it's got the guys that are going to understand what it takes, if that's going to turn on in that way. You know, that becomes more of a question mark going forward, which I don't have if they go to the Super Bowl and just simply lose by 3 points. You know. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, wake me up in September, Brandon. I'm ready. I got you, Jeffrey. I got you, man. I'll be waking you up all the way through, man. Wait till we get to training camp. I'm going to be hyped through the moon on this team. So I feel you, though. I feel you. You get the people just starting to get back into football. They've been baseball, been basketball, been kind of just doing their summer vacations. So it starts to round out a little bit now. Starting to round out just a little bit right now. And Megan, I'll be definitely looking at some of the nose tackles this next week. So check in with me next week. I should have a couple of these guys taking a look at. Herbert says, I like Sweat for nose tackle. Both the Clemson inside linebackers look great. Ooh, I like me some Trotter, man. My first look at Trotter, he'd be a great pick if we can get him next year. I think he's going to have he'll have a better season this year, I think, than Trent Simpson did last year. Ryan says, hopefully our Cameron Young kills it. That's who I want to be the guy. That's maybe the most important rookie if he can come out and light the world on fire, because it's for the most needed position in nose tackle of any other guys you drafted, which you draft a lot of positions that can be just rotational guys. But the one guy you need to go out there and really light it up is Cameron Young, for where you stand from a depth standpoint and talent standpoint and all that in between, upside down, inside out. Callie says the classic chicken neck squeeze. It works, man. It's effective. It ain't pretty, but it gets the job done. Kelton says, nah, it's not a hard question. It's always fun to see your team win in playoff games. Exactly. Exactamundo. Grog, I'd be okay with Cam Ward. Cam Ward's an interesting player to watch this year. And a guy certainly in contention of being a guy that I think the Hawks would look at. And he's Diggs' cousin, like you say. That doesn't hurt either, does it? Mr. Isaac, would you rather destroy the Niners in the NFC Championship 42-0 or win on a Hail Mary with 0 on the clock? 42-0, because I think you're giving them enough room to be able to blame officials somehow. Be like, Hail Mary 2. One of you guys was pushing off. You guys were pushing off. Hail Mary 2. We'd be in 42-0. You can't say nothing. You just have to shut up and take your ball and go home and lick your wounds. So I'll take the latter. Sorry, I'm all behind the chat, trying to catch up here. Let's see where I was at. Oh man, I got behind. Really behind. Holy hell. Daniel Cabs, how you doing, man? It's good to see you in the chat. You should be stoked for this year. It's going to be an awesome one. Aside, Jen, I'd rather Penix than Willis, too. Greg, people say we can't have another all-time great secondary, but why not? We got a top 5 pick at corner with the highest ceiling ever, an all-pro in Adams, and a great safety in Diggs. Why not? I mean, for me, it's more of a probability deal. I think it's hard to create a legendary secondary twice in a 10-year period. I think as well, we have to acknowledge that a lot of the secondary success that did occur was also coming because you had a great front seven in addition to that. And while you have some solid elements in this front seven, and you got some really nice edges you like a lot, the front seven is not really in a comparative state to, where it was prior, and that you need both of those two things to work to make it great. You may have more talent in that Legion of Boom, but it doesn't have as much or anywhere close to the supporting help on the front end. And so I think that's what then can make it a little bit harder to replicate. It's possible, but I just think it is an uphill battle from that element. When we're talking about getting to legendary defense, and understanding too, Greg, there's only been so many legendary defenses. There's only been so many what we call legendary secondaries. They just don't come along very often. It's almost like at times beyond just coaching right and drafting the right guys. It's almost like the lightning in the bottle. You just sort of, strike gold, so to speak, because of everything just coming together at just the right time. Jacob says, remember when everyone was saying Seattle should grab Malik or one of those quarterbacks a few drafts ago? Pepperidge Farm remembers. I do remember that. I do remember that. Tony Wright says, good evening, Brandon. I agree with you about Malik Willis in the 2022 draft. Close to 40% of the Atlanta Falcons nation wanted to draft him, as I was adamant about it, saying no. Yeah, I was absolutely in that place too. We had a lot of them in here. I saw Willis in college in his last 3 games at Ole Miss at home versus Louisiana Lafayette and Army. He threw 11 interceptions to 4 touchdown passes. The tape wasn't good. It's going to the tape on him, and you should, with all prospects, beyond how they look or how good a ball they throw, comes down to how's their tape. And when your tape is atrocious and you're playing for Liberty against the level of competition that you're going to play against Liberty, and whether you're dominating or not, if you don't look good, if you don't look like you can do normal, typical quarterback things I'm going to need you to do in this league, I'm going to ding you for that. And the athleticism, I mean, people were trying, Tony, to say that he was Michael Vick from ability to move standpoint, or Lamar Jackson. And he's not even he's not even 2 levels within where those guys are from his ability to move and be sudden and all that. So he's closer to Geno Smith almost in a lot of ways than he is. In fact, I think Geno averaged more yards on the ground per carry than Malik did last year. So I'm very out on Malik Willis. Alexander Brandon, what's your thoughts about our defensive tackles? Do you think we still need to try and make a move? I do believe we do, Alexander. I think the team is probably at a position right now where, absent some disgruntled zero tech out there who wants a contract, whose team is then willing to move him because they don't want to pay him the contract, maybe they don't have the money or they have another plan for the position. Outside of a situation like that emerging, the team is going to wait until the final cut day at the end of training camp, and hopefully they can grab 1 or 2 guys that they bring in to fill the spot. They don't seem to look at it as much of a priority, a worry as much as we do. And if they can't do that, then they'll probably make a trade, Alexander. So I think there's going to be another move made somewhere, some point down the line, be it the cuts or a trade if that doesn't work. Hard to tell on that, though, who it will be, because I don't know who will be cut at this point. We'll have to let training camp kind of play out and see, what young guys are emerging, what old guys are being deemed too expensive at that point. Kelvin says, here's my theory on Shanahan and Lance. The season prior, the Niners play versus the Bills. Josh Allen was a beast that game. I think Kyle wanted that. You know how the Beats run Allen. I do. I mean, and Josh Allen's been run with a reckless amount of abandon that you're intimating about, and I agree. They have run him that way. I laugh a little bit, though, as Shanahan looks at them running it that way, understanding the history of what he dealt with Robert Griffin, understanding how John Elway's body was at the end after all of his scrambling around early in his career playing the game that way. Josh Allen is a wonder and certainly a dominant player in the way that he does what he does. But he also, in continue to play with this reckless abandon, is playing with fire and eventually going to get himself injured for it, and maybe injured really badly. I don't think coaches should be aspiring towards that in this modern age. I know we want to have quarterbacks that can run and do all that other stuff, but to use them in that way, you're going to get them broke. And it's been kind of a miracle Josh hasn't. It's partly because he's just how he's so built. He's like Roethlisberger, where it's just the guy's just so big. He's just got just naturally a big dude. But I wouldn't be aspiring to that. I think you might be right, though. I could see Allen Shanahan getting himself. It just, again, comes down to, though, Kellen, he had learned the lesson once before. We can find that clip where he's talking about protecting the quarterback in that way, not using him like that. That's the place where I come back to, but you told us you had learned this lesson. Why didn't that lesson still apply with Lance? Why did you suddenly leave that lesson just because you got caught up in the illustriousness of Josh Allen when he was out there cooking? Greg says, people say Adams is bad in coverage. Now we know that's not true, but what are his strengths and weaknesses? Is he bad in zone, good in man? He's probably best in man coverage on running backs and tight ends. His issues would be as a single high safety, which is going to be very rare that you're going to ask strong safeties to play that way. But there were times when the Seahawks did ask him to play in a single high safety role. That's not him going backwards, Grug, is not Adams' strength. You don't want him backpedaling the least amount that you can. And you want him coming forward and attacking. So his strengths are coming downhill. And everything else that's the inverse of that would be the weakness of it. He does not have a good ability to track the ball or good hands. Definitely has some stone hands out there as well. So those would be the main things that are detriments. But an insanely instinctive defender, a player that is good in coverage when it comes to playing man or even in zone on those running backs or tight ends. A great rally to the ball defender, good, obviously the best pass rushing defensive back in the game on top of that. But the weaknesses are what they are, and you've got to try to mitigate them. Tony says, I read that, Tony. In Willis's collegiate home game versus the Army, he threw 4 interceptions against Army. That told me all I needed to know. Yeah, that should have been enough right there. Those narratives, though, they stick deep. Connor, yeah, Diggs was top 3 in all of those stats in a good way. First in yards means least in the amount of yards given up. First in interceptions and most interceptions. I think he said, receptions, I think was the one you meant to write in there. It's great stats. He's got a lot backing up with him. PFF grade wasn't bad either on top of it, Connor. He should be considered in a lot higher realm. Tony says, I wanted Cincinnati's Desmond Ridder and glad we drafted him instead of Willis. You see, Brandon, the problem with a lot of Falcon fans is they want the second coming of Michael Vick. As a fan, I don't. Yes, the flash, Tony, the flash over substance a little bit at times. Because certainly you guys didn't get the Michael Vick that he was with the Eagles where he was minding his P's and Q's. And this is self-admitted by Michael Vick. Just the wild player running around is fun, but it's not always the thing that's going to take you to Super Bowls. Ridder is a guy that has a skill set he can develop, and he's got the help around him where he doesn't have to carry the day, who can go out there, I think, and be successful. He's got to improve and get moved along, but I'm with you. I still land on the point of he was of a quarterback class that I don't think it was particularly really strong. He was the guy that I gravitated towards most out of the lot. And I'm still kind of in that camp. I know Pickett's definitely out there and people like Pickett a little bit, but I still feel like with Ridder, he's got from the mobility to the arm to the processing, throwing with anticipation. There's some stuff to his game that is really nice. And especially in that offense is so run heavy. It's not going to ask him to carry a heavy load, this is when smart teams drafting a player for the right situations to put him in the position to be successful. TJ says, Gino and JSN nickname 7-Eleven because it'll always be open. I saw that on a video and it's a cool nickname. 7-Eleven's pretty nice, man. I do like that one. That's a nice little nod, dude. I might steal that one too, TJ. I might steal your steal on that one. It's good to see you in the chat, man. Hope you've been doing well. Spaces, one thing I noticed is the LLB had better tackling techniques. Indeed, that's been a little bit of a light thing in recent years. They also had the ability to train a little bit more space. You had 2-a-days, more padded practices. You could teach the hawk tackling technique. The NFL's removed that. The players have, with the multiple CBAs that I think have been signed since those early Legion of Boom days, you have the players at each turn trying to have the number of practices dialed back, the number of practices that are padded dialed back. That's only going to make it harder for the coaches to teach things like tackling that requires guys being in pads. Live fire, the only way to learn it, so to speak. Alexander says, yeah, I think the D-line definitely needs to improve last year. Wow, it was pretty damn bad. Yeah, it was really bad. Really bad. There's a reason you moved off from all 4 guys. Yeah. Tony says your Seahawks should have won 2-year. You should have had a 2-year dynasty. My Falcons would have won their first Super Bowl. The Niners would have had their 6th Super Bowl, and the Bengals would have had their first Super Bowl. I would have taken that. Sucks to give the Niners another one, but if we get 2 out of it, I can't be mad at that. Evan Reed says, does anyone see Geno throwing for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns? I could see the 40 touchdowns being more potentially likely than the 5,000 yards because it takes a lot of throws to get to 5,000. I see him getting over 4,500 yards next year, Henry. I think it'll be hard to get to 5, especially with their balance on offense. Tony says, also the Patriots would have lost 5 straight Super Bowls. That would have been nice, Tony. That would have been particularly nice. I would have enjoyed that. Guy needs more cowbell. Now. Yeah, Connor, I agree. I don't think Carroll would let Geno throw enough to get to 5K. He's got the dogs on the outside to get it done, but coach is not going to want to throw that much. Where's Pumpkin? I forgot to bring over my cat tree. I'll get her up here. Pumpkin, your presence has been requested. Your presence presence has been requested. Your peoples need you. Your peoples need you. Yeah. They do. Yeah. Right now. What are you doing? No, your cat tree. I was bringing you up for your cat tree. Yeah, there's no way you're going to crawl up on me right now. You just got to do your cat tree. There you go. All's well. There we go. We're going to do this move. We're going to do this move. We're going to prowl. Spaces, our schedule isn't as bad as nearly one thinks. I don't think our schedule is too bad either. I think it's workable. I've definitely seen worse. Definitely seen tougher. Tony Wright, Jimmy, Mr. Spotlight Johnson. Nobody likes Jimmy like Jimmy. Henry says, why am I not impressed with the Niners? I don't know, man. They're a good team. They're a good team. I was a hungry team last year. If they didn't have Purdy go down, I think they very likely win that Eagles game, and they then provide Mahomes with a pretty tough matchup because it's the defense that doesn't need to blitz you a lot or do a lot of crazy things to get after it. They can run it pretty simply just because they're so talented, which, would have been a fun, would have been an interesting matchup against Mahomes, but I think that Kansas City did beat him earlier in the year. Jacob says Cards regret that contract they gave Kyler. Undoubtedly. Come on, baby. Right here. Tony says the Rams will start the season 0-11, then go 3-3 after that. 3-14. Their fans will be the first fan in droves to wear paper bags over their heads since 2008 Detroit Lions. They have to have fans that care enough to do that, Tony. Those fans will be so checked out after week 2 that they'll be like, oh, we're not winning the Super Bowl this year. Let's go to the beach. Greg says giving Sean McVay Caleb Williams is like giving the Joker a SAR bomb. Yeah, I would not be happy by that. We would be in for some problems and troubles into the near future. I agree. It's kind of a worst case scenario in certain ways when it comes to Caleb. Please let him go to the AFC. Hawks says, can the week 1 be a trap game? The Rams have always given the Hawks issues. If it was a week 2 game, I'd call it a trap game, Hawks-O. But in that week 1 game, all those players are so hyped up through the roof. Everyone's turned up to the nth degree. It's the new season. It's hard to catch a team kind of unaware at that point because everybody's on their toes. So I don't think so. I think we're going to get them pretty well in that first game, especially how young it is. Remember all those rookies they'll have starting their first game, Hawks-O? Alexander Matthew, Brandon, can you do Joe Pesci without all the F-bombs? You can't. Well, number one, it's impossible to do Joe Pesci without the F-bombs. But I can't do a Joe. Now, I can't quite get to his cadence. You talk to my friend? You talking to my friend? What, am I funny? Am I funny like a clown? I can't quite get, you got to get a little bit to that little bit of that higher pitch point I can't quite touch with Joe. Yeah. So I ask him, am I funny like a clown? Plus, you got to be able to drop F-bombs with Joe Pesci. Every other word's got to be a Joe F-bomb. Impossible to do the impression of not. Herbicide says, I don't know. Rams still got Donald, Cup, and Stafford. Just that I see them winning at least 8. Maybe. I do think Herbicide McVay is a very good coach. And maybe those 3 guys enough on their own can be enough to kind of carry the day for them with that. But I'll tell you, past that, there's not a whole lot else there in the cupboard, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It is a very, very, very thin group over there. But we'll see. It's possible, maybe. McVay's a good coach, and he got a lot out of that team last year with what they were. I just as the so-called experts on TV are all over the Rams thinking they can make some noise. I don't get it. LA thing, I guess. Big market team. Yeah. I don't get it either. This isn't even like me just hating on the Rams. The Rams have out and out showed you in every fashion that they were in not just a minor rebuild mode, not in a reload mode, but in a take it all down to the foundation, and then we're going to rebuild all the walls and the roof and everything inside from scratch. No Leonard Floyd, no more Odell Beckhams, no more Allen Robinson that they got out from under that contract. Everybody must go. Even the secondary guys, Greg Gaines and Ashawn Robinson's gone. You know, they've torn it all away, whatever there was there prior. But I don't know. I'm not surprised national media is on there hanging on the jock on that one. Alexander says, hopefully now with wide receiver JSN, DK doesn't get mugged on every play. Shaking my head. Hopefully. I'd love to see some more single coverage for DK. That'd be a beautiful thing. Brittany Stipes, how you doing? It's good to see you in the chat. Appreciate you watching. And Herbicide, I agree. I think the Ravens are going to be good too. They are changing offenses. Let's also acknowledge that with the Ravens is they're moving away from the Mark Roman, we're going to run the Colin Kaepernick offense for Lamar Jackson kind of thing. So he's now they're going to more of the pro style stuff. Is Lamar going to take to that? Is he going to have the ability to throw from that kind of offense? The ability to go through the progression reads that's required? Is he going to be smart pre-snap on picking things up in the way he needs to be on with that? It'll be interesting to see. They have also put together a pretty good team around them, though, on top of it. Maze Guru with Hawks Nest, does it drive you nuts listening to the Seahawks press conferences? I'm talking about how they refuse to give a microphone to the reporters, listening to one side of the conversation. Yeah, especially because it's been a couple-year problem. And you would think that at some point somebody would be like, why don't we just get a mic over here for this? So I'm not a big fan of it. I will say too, there's some stuff that comes out in these press conferences good from the reporters. There is some guys do better than others with it. I wish, I do wish some of these reporters would go a little more in depth with certain things. I feel like reporters sometimes ease on this thing of being like, well, I don't know the game, so I'm just going to stay on these real easy surface level questions because I don't want to go into any kind of deep question stuff. And then you don't ever get to really the depths of anything. And it's really just a part of them not doing really the legwork they should to understand stuff so they can ask the kind of questions that the audience would be interested in hearing them reply to. Like when KJ Wright is going through and asking these kind of questions on his show with these players, and none of these other reporters have ever asked these players these questions. Why? Don't want to rattle cages, don't want to, So, but the mic thing needs to get fixed. The mic thing's a little bit dumb. Not just a little bit dumb, but a lot dumb. Jeffrey F&M's dude, bunch of clowns. They got it together. It was cool to see maybe Shohei Ohtani things kind of getting a little bit maybe steam now. That would definitely help matters if we can get that guy picked up. We got to get on the horn with the Angels. Be like, look, he's going to be ours after the year anyway. Do you want to get something for him right now, or nothing? We'll take something. Okay. Let's go. Herbert says, I don't see us drafting another first round outside linebacker in the draft. No, Herbicide, you're right. You're not taking anybody high. But Trotter would be like an inside middle linebacker. He'd be. But yeah, there's no way they go back to edge again. Well, probably not, Herbicide. Uchenna's a free agent. Taylor will be 1 year from free agency, but you still have Hall and Buffet. But it's not likely. Especially to Herbicide because there's so much of a strength. It looks like a defensive tackle and linebacker in next year's draft, which then it makes it that much of an easier decision for the Hawks because it's for a position of need and it's for a position that's better than the other players available at a different position like edge. Alexander says we need to move off of Eskridge and Brooks next year. I think it's very likely to happen at that point, Alexander. Eskridge goes through his third season this year as a second-round pick, which means that he has a fourth-year restricted tag that the Seahawks may or may not put on him. And if he goes out again and is injured this year, they're not going to put it on him again. They've already denied the fifth-year option on Brooks as a former first-round pick. So he is a street free agent after the season already. They don't have to do anything for that to happen. So, yeah, I think very much there's a good chance that's going to be the case. I don't know if even Eskridge, kind of like Herbicide says, I don't even know if he makes it through this year, through this training camp. It's going to have to stay healthy. Brian says, same mantra as last draft, no quarterback before round 4. No, before 4, Brian? You wouldn't go 2 or 3? I won't go first round next year, but second or third round, man, there might be some pretty juicy options in there. Sajan, should we have kept Goodwin? No. Goodwin was really good for us last year. And he filled the slot role when we had literally nobody else who could be functional within it. He also did probably some of his best damage, though, of course, in the Chargers game. And why did that be one of the games he did some of his best damage? Because DK Metcalf went out with an injury early in that game, so he was able to slide to the outside and make some big plays. So while he was functional and workable in that slot, he wasn't a game changer out there, and he wasn't something that you couldn't replace. And with Goodwin, the other part, as Alexander's post a little bit below there, is the injury situation. Last year was not a one-off with Marquise Goodwin. He's been injured throughout his career. And as we've seen with guys like Eskridge, it seems like especially these receivers. I'm not saying it's a toughness thing. I'm just saying it's always receivers. Yeah. But there's just these guys that are injured every year. You might get them for 4 games. You might get them for 5 games. You might get them for 10 games. But they're going to break down on you at some point. And that's Goodwin. And I don't really like signing guys that I know are going to be like that. Not that I'm like, there's a chance of this, but I know they're going to be like that. And when it reaches this year, when it reaches this point in Goodwin's career, that's the spot we're at, where we can make that determination, I think, at this point. So he was fine, but JSN will be way better. And you can do even better than Goodwin, really, if you wanted to go out there and try to attack it as a trade deadline deal if you had a couple of injuries, let's say, to JSN or Eskridge. Brian Meyer says Eskridge is not gone yet. Sports Radio 710 thinks he's the breakout in 2023. Indeed. And look, 710 is basing this off what they're hearing from the coaching staff and players from minicamp about how explosive Eskridge looks. Geno Smith was referencing that he was going to be training with him privately after minicamp. He seems to be looking like he's in his best shape, which provides a lot of people some optimism at that point. And the guy is talented in the respect of he is very explosive, very athletic, very hard to bring down in the open field. There are some elements he brings to the table that I wouldn't say go on and say they're fully special, but there's a reason some people were going hard with the comparison when he was drafted with Tariq Hill. And some of that explosiveness and just get up and go from 0 to 50, like a Ferrari. That stuff does still exist with him, but the injury thing is the part we got to keep coming back to. The man was injured in college multiple times. He's been injured here, injured multiple times with multiple different injuries. Can't stay healthy. That's the part that he's got beyond really what he does on the field as a player. He's got to prove that part as much as anything else. And that's a big what if. Grug, I think we can easily build a great front 7 for our secondary. I mean, a lot of pieces are already in place. I don't know. I feel like we can really do it again. Maybe not great as LOB, but close. I'm with it, man. Grug, I love your optimism of hope to have it. And I am only really as much as anything just speaking from being that guy watching for decades on end that just knows when you had it, how unusual that was to have it. I will say this, though, to your point, Greg. There's a lot of people, especially a lot of the old heads out there that were Seahawks fans of the 80s and saw all those games early, mid-80s, who would sit down, who would swear up and down that the secondaries with the Dave Browns and the Kenny Easleys, they had one year in particular, just a ridiculous amount of turnovers and pick sixes, that those were not that far off from the Legion of Boom team secondaries. They'll swear it up and down. So, I mean, maybe to your point, this is just something that is kind of a lineage thing here in Seattle. And we'll have our 3rd generation of it coming down the track now with this one. We just need a guy to do those backflips when we kneel for the game. We do, Jacob. It's a pretty cool move when Goodwin would do that. Nothing seals a victory like a backflip. Freedom Joe, defensive line, help please. We need some Freedom Joe. We need some help there. We need some help. It comes from three different potential places, and I do think one of these is going to be utilized by John Schneider. Either A, you have a team near the end of training camp who has a young zero tech emerging as a rookie on a very cheap deal. They have an older vet who's maybe heading into the final year of his contract. They feel like they're going to play the young guy more. They want to get out from under the money of that deal. They call up John Schneider and they say, hey, Johnny boy, I know you need a zero tech. Let's make a deal for a 4th-round pick, for a 5th-round pick. And then you bring the guy on that way. The second method would be by the final cut down day. The cut down day in the NFL this year is going to all occur on one single day. It used to happen over 3 different periods. Now it happens on one period. So every guy hits the streets on the same day. You hope you can find a guy from the ranks of all those cut players you're able to bring on and who can provide you some snaps. The third method would be a trade deadline deal. Find a team that's out of the race, has a good zero tech, and you go grab them then at that point, week 4, week 5, week 6. I think those are going to be one of the 3 methods they use, but I don't know which one it is. The team doesn't seem really as pressed by this as we are, Joe, in the fan base. They seem pretty calm about the whole situation. D-Boy, Brandon, pick one. Peyton Manning, Eli, or Archie Manning, and which one's better? I'm going to go with Peyton Manning will be considered the all-time best Manning of all the Mannings. The hunger in Peyton, I mean, you got with Eli and Peyton. I think Eli had even more natural talent than Peyton. I think he could move better. I think he had a bigger arm. But Peyton shows you what that Kobe Bryant, obsessed work ethic can get you, even if you don't have that same kind of necessarily talent at that spot of things. Not the talent, Peyton had a decent arm coming out. It wasn't as bad. Archie, we're going to have to see with him. And I know he's got a lot of hype and he's got maybe the best pure tools of any of them. But Peyton had one of the best all-time runs as a quarterback in NFL history. To replicate that even within the same family is tough, no matter how talented you are as Archie. Does Archie want it as bad as Peyton? Yeah. We'll see. Keldon says, I agree. I hope Kyle learned that lesson again. I'll say this. Let's push this forward, Keldon. Give Trey a chance. And with me, Keldon, I've been a big Trey Lance backer. So a lot of this, a little bit of disappointment's like weird thing where you're rooting for a player. I'm not a fan of the Niners, but I am a fan of Trey Lance's game coming out. And I like him as a player. And so, okay, it happened last year, right, Keldon? No more power runs. No more power runs. If you want to run the read option to the quarterback to the sidelines, do so. Give him the sideline as a protection. Give him the ability to see the hit coming. Don't run the read option up the A gap. That's all I'm at. I'm a simple man, and this is my request to that Shanahan as a coach on this. That's all you got to do. You can still use the guy's legs. You can still design quarterback runs for him, but put him in a position to control the collisions as much as he can, because there's already enough collisions where guys like Brock Purdy got hit, whereas a quarterback, you're taking hits you can't see coming. You don't want to add to those number of hits, because then you add to the probability that the guy becomes injured. And what's the squeeze worth, right? Like the power run for a quarterback, what's that going to get you? 6 yards at its best, right? This ain't a play that's like going to the house every once in a while. Nobody's taking it to the house. Brian says, argument to sign Jalen Smith is strong. Not sure on the cost. I think Jalen Smith never recovered from his leg injury, quite frankly. And he had the 1 year with the Cowboys where he was kind of able to do whatever, but the guy had a 56 grade last year with the Giants. The year before that, he had a 66 grade. The year before that, he had a 54 grade. The year before that, he had a 70 grade. That was the 1 year, I think, where he got his contract, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not against it. It's going to be a league minimum deal if you bring him in. I guess 2018 was the season he actually played really well. But boy, he was not able to sustain it. We don't have a lot there at the position. So if you can go get him for vet minimum at this point, why not? I don't know if Jordan Brooks is going to be ready. I don't know how good Devin Bush is going to be. So it's not the worst thing, Brian, but we can't spend money on him. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot there left in the tank there. He kind of just had that 1 year with the Cowboys like 4 years ago. Sijin says, did we not address the trenches already? Well, remember, Sijin, you dumped 4 guys off this defensive line. You signed 2 and you drafted Cameron Young. So you have Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed, Cameron Young, Miles Adams kind of making up the interior. You have basically 1-0 tech right now. Ryan Monet may or may not be ready around the start of the season. And even if he is ready, you kind of know what he is. So it's a little still opened up. Greg says Adams is really underrated tight end killer. I remember him knocking that touchdown out of Kittle's hands. Not only that, Greg, that was really, I think, as much as any game that Adams has played here, one that showed off his full skill set, especially in coverage, because he really was on Kittle throughout the whole course of that game. You know, he was tight in coverage and he was good on him. So they tried a little, I think, a half back pass back to the quarterback, and they tried to get Adams being over aggressive, but he was able to come back and make a play later in that game too. You're talking about the play down by the end zone where he knocked it away, but he had another play where he was right on it as well. So he was fantastic in that game in coverage all the way around. And it's another narrative out there that gets talked about that Adams can't cover. He can cover. You just don't need to be putting him in cover 1, cover 2 situations. Don't put him out in space. Get him up around the box. And this is normally what you would ask strong safeties to do anyway. So it's not a crazy difference of requirement from the position. Herbicide says, I'm kind of hoping Tavai turns into a freak of nature. Well, that is going to be the next show we do on Sunday. In fact, I was going to do this as an upload, but it's going to just take me too much time, and I just want to just show you guys the clips and roll it, so to speak. So when we get to Sunday, we're going to do a UDFA show, and it's going to be featuring, I think, 4 or 5 is what I'm going to do. So it's going to be Matt Landers, Jake Bobo, Jonah Tavai, Noah Griffendorf, and maybe one other guy. I looked at the McConnell guy of Montana. There's not a lot there on tape with him that jumps out to me. Arquan Bush, those would be the main guys I think that can have some impact as undrafted rookie free agents. And you're right, Herbicide, those Pacific Islanders are no joke. No joke. Samuel, more of us fans need to Deans that we got to go after Quinn Williams. Package deal with Fant included. Seahawks need this. I'm with it, Samuel. If you can go out there and make that kind of move, then let's go make it. There's a couple problems with trying to do the Fant, as I think that the Jets just signed CJ Azamoah a couple years ago, just a year and a half ago, and he's their move tight end already in place. So I don't know if there would be much there for them wanting Fant. But you can always move Fant in a separate package and then take the extra pick that you get back from Fant and combo it together. What makes this deal to happen, Samuel, to occur, what's going to have to occur is Quentin, in his negotiations with the Jets, is going to have those negotiations break down. And if that occurs, then they may be open to trading him at that point in time. But they have indicated they want to try to get a deal done with him. It's going to be about what the cost is, of course, though, because the contract the guy with New York just signed, and then the contract LeBron Payne signed this offseason has pushed the defensive tackle market up to a pretty high point, probably much higher than the Jets thought it was going to be maybe a year ago. And so that's probably giving them some issues. I also think the Jets have done some weird thing too, where they lowered down Rodgers' cap hit to a bare minimum this year, but it means that they're going to have to spend $100 million on cap hit on Rodgers after this year for a single season with the way that they've designed this, I think. So that could be kind of cause a little bit of a monkey wrench in the Jets' negotiations with Williams too. But he's fantastic. I just don't know if the Jets will let him go, Samuel. It's not quite the same situation of Adams, where Jets weren't a good team. What's the sense in paying a safety at this point? Let's just get picks and pull this reload all together. They're more in a moment now where they're trying to compete. Leland Kimball, thank you for the $10 donation. Sorry, a little late on acknowledging. Appreciate it, though. Appreciate the dono. He says, sorry for the prolonged absence. Hey, man, I understand how it goes. No worries if people got to take a break. I get it. We got life, things going on. I just appreciate you always coming back. Just as long as you always come back home, I'm happy. He says, I happen to be back in the States, sort of. Alaska, laughing out loud. It's kind of. I'm excited for this upcoming season with the continued draft, free agent signings. Looking forward to your coverage of it all. Where we're going to go as deep as we ever can gone last year. We're going to keep adding to on this, Leland. I'm going to keep diving into the depths with this. So I'm really excited for this year too. There's been years in doing this channel where I've seen the year turn around and I'm going, okay, I think it'll be a good year. So this is going to be a rough year, or boy, this is I'm going to have to turn over some tough realities this season. It is very, very much fun from a person covering this team to be able to cover a team that's doing things intelligently, to be able to cover a team that is trying to, think forward thinking and try to be a little bit more on their cutting edge of their thought process as far as being where they were on the other opposite end of the scale at times. And when I was first kind of starting this channel up in their approach and methodology. So you have a right to be excited. You should be excited for this team, Leland. They are on the rise. They could tap into that this year and become contenders this year, but whether it happens this year or into the short, near-term future, they're on the right track. And I have a lot of faith that they're going to get there because they have operated so smartly over this last couple of year period. Kelvin says we have the male version of Pumpkin. His name is Milo. He has 3 legs. Oh, nice, man. You got yourself a tabby. They're a live wire, aren't they, Keldon? The tabbies, if you folks are ever getting a cat and you're looking at the orange one, just know you're doing some math. The fact that this sucker's going to be always turned on. The batteries never run out on this one. Energizer bunny type of stuff. Jacob, remember we only get that gauntlet of teams near the end of the season. At that point, some might have injuries that make it easier for us. Agreed. Schedule stacked up well. It's balanced out well. You don't have too much of a murderer's row point. It's that 2 Niners game and the Eagles game in there. That's the one where you really look at it and you go, oof. I think you got 3 games in like 18 days or something like that. It's going to be the tough point. No doubt about that. No, there's no way of slicing different. But the rest of the schedule is not too bad. And if you only got one little small part of the schedule that you're really looking at going, that's the one that gives me, you got a pretty nice schedule. If that's how you end up seeing it. Thank you, Leland, for that $10 dono, though, man. Appreciate you. And I promise I'll be going as hard as ever this year. Some big plans here for the channel. I got to get my training camp stuff figured out here. Connor says the Seahawks actually have the 10th easiest schedule based on Vegas projected win totals for all teams. Whew, I like that. I know some of you out there, talked about this last show, some of you guys out there like that iron on iron thing. Iron sharpens iron. No. We'll be the iron. Make everybody else a satin pillow. I'm perfectly happy going out and doing that all year. Keep my team nice and fresh and a lot of nice, easy victories. I'll be perfectly happy with that. Samuel, Quentin Williams is worth a first and a third. Oh, you better believe it, Samuel. Yeah, he's absolutely worth that. I think that's the bare minimum of the cost. Very likely that it costs you. I mean, if Adams is 2 first-round picks and a third, quite honestly, it's probably 2 first-round picks and a third for Williams, or at least 2 first-round picks to make it happen. Connor says Williams would be a great signing, but he would cost a fortune. Last I saw, he wanted a contract around $30 million. Indeed, you'd have to find a way to clear up some money to make it happen, and you'd lower down that first-year cap hit tremendously to have to squeeze him in. But you could do it. It's not, there'll be people out there who say, there's no way we could do it. You could do it. You could do it. But it would be hard. Quinn is the name, and no, he's not. Maybe a second year, 1 year, and third the next. You say, no, he's going to be worth a lot, I think, if you try to trade for him. He's one of the top probably 5-6 defensive tackles in the sport, and he's really young. Samuel says he wants 23 per year. Probably 23 is about what it costs. 23, 24. He ain't getting 30. Sajin says, you can't do Pesci without the pleasantries. Loved him in Lethal Weapon. You can. They F you. They F you in the drive-thru, okay? Okay. They drive you in the drive-thru. They F you. Yeah, you can't. You got to have the F-bombs. You got to have it. It's part of his vernaculars. It's just, doesn't matter the character, real life, acting. He's dropping it either way. Is there a difference between the actor Joe and the real Joe? You tell me. D-Boy says, why would you want to hear Joe without the F-bombs? Exactly. This doesn't fit, man. This does not fit. Doesn't add up. Grug says, according to pretty much every site, Sauce allowed a lower yard per target and yard per completion rate than Woolen. Why do you think that is? Is it because of scheme? I could give you like my toxic answer on this, Greg. which is it's easy to allow a lower yard per target when you're able to grab and pull like, you're trying to take wallpaper off every play. And that's at times what it looks like to me with Sauce on a lot of his, targets. I don't see Woolen grabbing in the same way, so he doesn't lean on that as much. I think as well with both of them, they're both pretty well rated in that stat, Grug. So we're separating between two guys who do a good job overall as it goes to that. Is it based on scheme? No. Robert Saleh is going to run a lot more similarities to our scheme than he's going to run differences. And really, Robert Saleh's differences in his scheme are going to be the wide 9 look up front more than it's going to be what he's doing on the back end in his secondary. Guys play off coverage. They're going to stick to their role on that. That's pretty much the dude you're going to have with Sauce, him pressing a lot. So this, where we come back to too, is you have him pressing, and he's allowed to get away with some holding over there on that. It's going to, he's already in a press look, and then you let him get the way at the holding. It starts to get very hard to get away from that guy. Pretty easy, pretty understandably why. So, I mean, it makes some sense a little bit, I guess, but I don't know. It's the allowed a lower yard per target is certainly a stat of value, but I don't know that it's, they're both pretty good in those respects. And there's some stats from both sides that you can bring to make an argument for one being better than the other. Some of it really comes down to Grug. What's the value you put on interceptions and taking away the ball? That really is where a lot of it goes down to for me at the end of the day. And you have one guy that's vastly better than the other guy in that respect. I don't think there's any place that Sauce is vastly better than Tariq Woolen down the other chart of things. Kelvin says, Greg Roman, you always call him Mark Roman. I know I do. That's one of those things, Kelvin, where I get older and I've had multiple names that are close together that at some point a Mark Roman has come into my mind. Stuff starts to run together, brother. It's scary, I'll tell you. It is scary. So I just got to stick with last names and I'm all good. Jacob says, Lamar throws for 6K. No way. No way. I would eat a hat if Lamar threw for 6K. D-Boy, Brandon, do you see Aaron Donald being loyal to the Rams and staying for the rest of his career or leaving the Rams? I think he retires after this year, D-Boy. He signed that new contract, and I think if he probably retired so early after the new contract, the Rams might have been like, yeah, you're going to need to pay a little bit of this back, guy. That's a lot of money that we got buried later on here on this deal we have to eat. But I think once he gets through the last year of this deal, I think he probably retires after this season. He's been flirting with it back-to-back off seasons a little bit. Alexander Brandon, I hope Geno doesn't get hurt, but say if he do you think Drew Lock could cut down on the interceptions, maybe coming from being older, more mature, or is he just an interception machine? I don't think that Drew Lock is an interception machine. I think what you have is a narrative that is following him from Denver that Seahawks fans see some proof of in the preseason last year. And so now it's jumped upon as a thing that this is what he really is. I mean, I know I'm on this kind of track with this a little bit, but man, these more and more I'm seeing some of these like narrative things that pop up that are just so untrue and so off the mark and so bereft of being based off of anything, and there's so many echoes with Drew Lock to what you get with Geno Smith. So go through it, right? What do I always say about Geno Smith? You're drafted in the second round. You probably should sit a year. You're not allowed to sit. You're put right into the starting lineup. Sound familiar with Drew? You're put in the starting lineup and you have a defensive-minded head coach. Doesn't Drew sound familiar with Geno with that? Geno with the Jets, Drew with Vic Fangio. So you got a defensive head coach that looks at those young quarterbacks, and it's kind of like sometimes the worst environment depending on the kind of defensive head coach you have for the maturation process of those young quarterbacks, because they look at him as a necessary evil. And so then you look at it beyond that. Skill position players, okay, you got Judy and you got Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick, but your offensive line's not good in pass protection. It's bad. And so you have the same thing with Geno Smith, where the line's not that good. He had even less playmakers than Drew did, but they have a lot more similarities between them in their first stop than before. And then let's go to last year. Drew Lock has 2 opportunities, 2 games in the preseason. First game of the preseason, he comes in, he's balling out. He's making throw after throw. He's making smart reads, smart decisions. And he misses a blitz at the end of the game that comes off the blind side that he doesn't pick up. and it's a sack fumble. Not a good look, but it's freakish play there. Then he gets the vid, right? Gets sick as hell. Tries to come back because he's in a quarterback competition with Geno. So he probably tries to come back a little bit too fast. And then when he comes back, Geno's kind of gotten the lead by default because he's had to rest. Geno's getting all those reps, and then Drew comes into the Cowboy game and he's pressing. He knows he has to make all these upper level throws to sort of now overtake this ground that he's lost. And then he ends up throwing a couple of interceptions by pressing. You put him in a position of not feeling like he has to press, of just playing the game, of just playing within himself, and having a coach like Carroll that is very much a coach that will help you lean into that as a player. I mean, that's the way Coach Carroll rolls. That's what he wants to do. He's not like Fangio would have been or another defensive coordinator, where they're going to get intense and, at times probably freak out some of those young quarterbacks. Certainly don't set up the right conditions to allow them to develop and flourish early on. Let's put it that way to try to keep it kind. So I am a big backer of Drew Lock. I maintain that just because in his first stop with Denver he didn't do great doesn't mean that he's not a quarterback with some talent who could reclaim that. And certainly watching how Denver has played as a team, played offensively, how Russ set with it, I think it makes Drew look even better in that, he got more out of that offense. He was able to be more productive than Russ was with it. I think that's saying something. So I'm on board with Lock if he has to come in. I like both quarterbacks. Megan says, do you think the reporters don't ask the hard questions in the pressers so they will be invited back, B? I do think that that's a big part of it, yeah. I think access, all that stuff, we just, and for whatever reason here, it's become a rule where it's just, if you were to have a guy in that press corps now that speaks up and asks some tough questions and presses thing a little bit, he probably doesn't last very long because there's kind of this whole, regimented environment of keep it milquetoast, don't press too hard. And so that's where I think it's tough because there is some media markets in some places out there that do have guys that will, get into it. And I'm not asking the reporters need to be belligerent or, be contentious like you've seen some reporters do in these kind of situations, especially in the modern age. But just ask tough questions at times. Ask questions where, look, we need some clarity on this. This doesn't make sense. Walk me through where your process is on it. I think you can find and strike a place where you ask those questions, form the question in a way that it doesn't come out disrespectful or that it's going to raise the ire of the coach while still getting to the meat and potatoes of it. It's just, it's the way you phrase it. But that's part of being a reporter, is the way to phrase a question, get it out the right way, to dig into the depths without necessarily setting off the counterpart you're asking the question out of. So it makes you a professional to find the way to do that. But yes, Megan, 100%. 100. Leland Kimball, thank you for the $2 donation. He says, to the depths, Leland, to the depths. Appreciate you, brother. And it's good to have you back, man. Missed you in the chat. News and analysis with Arturo. Charbonnet will be a beast at tailback. You better believe he will. He will believe. You could draft Charbonnet this year as a fantasy back, and I think you're in good shape. Number one, because the running back position for Seahawks gets banged up more often than not. Number two, he's going to be used as a short yardage back, so there's going to be a lot of just simply, if anything, just touchdown situations for Charbonnet, even if he's not getting you the yards. Keldon, you can get a pretty good quarterback with the last pick in the draft. Solid strategy. It's great. Nothing like going after Mr. Irrelevant to be the quarterback of your future. Side Jim Brandon, will you be doing the stream till 2 a.m. since we blew it up tonight? Probably won't be going that long, man. We'll go a little bit. I got some stuff I got to do tonight. I'm actually starting to try to look at maybe getting back over to the west side. So anybody looking for a roommate? Keldon, you can get a pretty good quarterback with the last pick. Oh, sorry, I read that one. Season said I should start the Zorn Craig talk to make up your vacation for vacation. So don't shoot the messenger. No. Amaze Guru, the Hawks Nest. Yeah, I'm old and can tell you firsthand Kenny Easley was the best Seahawk of all time. If you don't believe me, watch how he had started catching punts with the cast on one hand. We're of like mind on this, Maze. Just because we didn't have a good punt returner at the time. I consider Kenny Easley to be the best safety in Seahawks history. I know there's some with the Cam and some with the Earl. For my money, Kenny Easley is the best. And a guy that probably could have played in any era. He just played. We were so young as a team at that time. He's get forgotten about. It's been so long since he played. But Kenny was a beast. Greg says the cover 3 in the wild card game was so frustrating. I think it was just Pete being scared to take risks and take the conservative route. Probably stems from Super Bowl 49. I hope that changes this year. Yeah, Greg, I was very frustrated by the cover 3 looks with the defense in the playoff game as well. And that's certainly, I bet you probably ran that 70-80% of the day. I referenced it throughout that week, and I still look at that playoff game in the same way as I stand now. You had house money. Nobody expected you to be there. Nobody thought you'd get in the playoffs. Everybody thought you were rebuilding. You're going into San Francisco. They've beaten you twice. They've beaten you pretty handily twice. I thought that there was a really great argument to be made that you let it all hang out. You play aggressively. You show them something different that they haven't seen from you as a team throughout the course of the year, not only in the games that you played against them, but in the games you had played in other games as well. And I thought you could have caught the Niners off guard. And I'm not saying it would have guaranteed a win or that there wasn't any way that we don't play that team 10 times in that stadium with where we were from a health standpoint and lose all 10 times. But I like that idea better than just sort of sitting back in soft coverage and letting them slowly bleed you through a whole game, which is what we did instead. So that was definitely the frustrating part for me too. I share your frustrations there. Grug says, where do you rank Richard Sherman among all-time corners, and who do you think is the GOAT of that position? Let me get my names up here so I can reference my kind of names in the orders the way I would want to do it. I don't know if I would have Richard Sherman as high as a lot of other Seahawks fans as a corner all time. I think Deion Sanders is probably going to be my guy that I would put up there as far as above anybody else. I think Rod Woodson is a guy that's got to be considered in that territory of things. I mean, even a guy like Dave Brown. I mean, you look at Richard Sherman and he's got 30 picks or whatever. It's like Dave Brown's got 62 interceptions in his career. He's almost got double the interceptions of Earl Thomas. Earl was definitely one of the better corners of his era. I do think that. But Darrell Green, Aeneas Williams, Eric Allen, Ty Law, Champ Bailey. I mean, Asante Samuel. I'm not Asante because of the tackling, but those are all guys to me that probably have a bit of a stronger argument to be made of being higher than him. And we could even be expanding it beyond that if we really wanted to go to something, deeper. You want to go to like the old school, like Dick Night Train Lane with his 68 interceptions. That guy's got certainly an argument to be made. Dick LeBeau, 62 interceptions. I know that's a different era, but I don't know. Everson Walls, I think guy won a couple of, at least one championship, I think, with the Giants. 57 interceptions. He talks about him. I love Sherman's career, and Seahawks fans hold him in very high esteem, but there's been some really great corners who produced for a very long period of time in this league. Sherman had a great run for a good period of time, but I'd say he's probably, in my estimation, more top 15 than he's maybe even top 10. I would go Sanders, Woodson, Dick Night Train Lane would be ahead of him. Charles Woodson would be ahead of him for me. Mel Blount would be ahead of Richard for me. Aeneas Williams would be ahead. Darrell Green would be ahead. Eric Allen would be ahead. Ty Law would be ahead. Champ Bailey would be ahead. That's basically 10 right there. So I love Richard, but we gotta be honest with ourselves also historically and look in the corners that have played this sport. And there's just been ones that have been more productive, better. Leland says, Brandon said it, but I was enjoying the new franchise shaking things up in the NHL for such a young team. Young teams are fun to watch, man, especially young, plucky expansion franchise teams. Man, those are awesome. Awesome. Watch those kind of players. And how about the Kraken, man? Megan says she's going to get me turned into an NHL fan here at some point. I remain reticent to believe that's going to be the case. I'm just probably too old for it. But I love seeing a local team doing what they're doing. Jail says, right now your cat jumped up there. My cat said meow. That was trippy. You know, they're on the same wavelength, man. They're on that singularity wavelength they're all tapped into. You know how it goes. Space says, why did we re-sign Myers right after the season ended? I guess the team thought that once it went to free agency, he was going to cost more, I suppose, or they wouldn't be able to structure the contract in the way that they could structure it with him. The Myers signing remains one of the signings and one of the few signings this offseason, outside of having a little bit of an issue with the one-year deals. It's one of the few signings I have that is a little confusing to me. That was a little bit of didn't make a lot of sense, and I don't have a lot of good excuses on that one. Leland says, I have a tabby named Roca and an all-black cat named Pythagorean. We're both the same on that too, Leland, because, of course, my second cat's black. So I guess there's something to the tabby-black combination. And they're two different personality types, so they don't go together necessarily, but that's funny. That's hilarious. Keldon, when I started it, we were using Siebel, but switched over to SQL. Damn, you know your stuff. You're working with that. Liz says, I'm definitely home until February. Summer in Alaska is fantastic, and my son will be old enough to travel with me regularly at the end of the school next year. I'll be in homeschool him, and we'll bounce around. That's cool. Sounds fun. Alaska's got to be great in summertime. I imagine no more beautiful place in the summer. Maze Guru, Drew Lock has all the intangibles, but just needs to stop forcing the ball. Just play within himself. That's all he's got to do. He can make every throw in the book. He's got probably even more mobility than Geno Smith does. He's just got to get better at protecting the ball. And that's a skill that you can learn as you go along in your career. It's not one that if you just have a tendency to do that when you're young, you can't clean up. A lot of young quarterbacks have had that tendency and found a way to fix things. BZ says, on Drew Lock being good enough if Geno gets injured, look how Russ did with the same team. Drew didn't have a real chance with Denver. Watching Geno should really pay off. Fantastic point, BZ. We're thinking of like mind on this as well. I think you've got to look at Russ in that situation, given the same kind of supporting factors that Drew had. And though Drew didn't take them to the heights, he was at least able to do more with them than Russ was able to do with them. And I think that's telling for a kid that was much younger than Russ, much younger in his career, not as far along as he's going to be, even to where he would be taking over the reins, let's say this year, or another 2 years ahead of that time of where he was prior. So I feel the same way. And I do feel all these quarterbacks at times, when they do fail in their first circumstance, oftentimes don't get a lot of benefit of the doubt. They failed simply because they suck. They fail simply because they should have hit the ground running. They fail simply because they don't have it. Now they are what they are. We've seen how these narratives can really set. Sometimes it's the case, and sometimes it's well-earned with certain quarterbacks. With other quarterbacks, though, it's a bit unfair. It's a bit of a lazy, just kind of an easy way to sort of toss them away and not have to think about them anymore. And John Hobbs, I agree on Ken Easley. I'm fully with you guys on Easley. To me, is the best safety in Seahawks history. He was, 11 interceptions, 10 interceptions in a given year once, 10 or 11, yeah, 17 interceptions in a 2-year period. Crazy. Alexander says, Brandon, if we make the Super Bowl this year, you should do a 24-hour stream, laughing out loud. I'll do it too. If we make the Super Bowl this year, I will do a 24-hour stream. 100%. 100%. The only tough thing I learned about those out long streams, I figured this out at the draft this year, is if you do a long stream, like a 13-hour stream now, YouTube cuts you off at like 12 hours. That at least is the replay. So you'd have to watch live in that second 12 to see everything. Connor says, I do think you have to take into account time differences, though. Even with less passing, it seems like the interceptions were more common 50 years ago versus 10 years ago. Also, corners could be more physical. Agreed that there's definitely got to be a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on that from one generation to the other. So I don't disagree with you that. I guess where I come down on it is that, if you have a player who's at 55 interceptions and, you have Richard Sherman, and it's not just about Richard interceptions, of course, playing corner is also about tackling. So you've got to give Richard his props as far as his ability to be one of the better tackling corners all time in NFL history. I will give him his props with that. But you got 37 interceptions to a guy that's got 40, 54, 55, 56, and there's a good collection of those guys that have that. I think Sherman sits something like 105th all time in interceptions. 105th. He's down there deep, So that's where it becomes a little bit depending on the person and where they feel about Richard, right? Because there's really no, how do we build into that older generation having quarterbacks that were more free with the ball, where interceptions weren't looked down upon as much? How do we value that a little bit much? Because then there's the other flip side to that you could say as well, is that they could be more physical, but they were expected to do a lot more man stuff, a lot more. Their job was a lot harder than if you were a guy that's playing off coverage and zone and you just have to stay clean over the top and react to everything in front of you. It gets into a little bit of a tricky conversation, but when you're that far away, as far as the most important thing you can do as a cornerback is intercept the football. And if you're half of what the top guys are at, as far as your final interception number, if your career was just a tiny bit shorter than some of those cornerbacks who played longer than you and played great for a longer period of time than you, I got to give them the nod over you at that point. Just from my own personal, but I agree, Connor, you do have to factor that other aspect in of the differences in the way that the game was played and how interceptions were valued or not worried about as much back in the day. Sam the Great, Champ Bailey's got to be a top 5 corner. Agreed. I don't put him that. Megan says, B, you are going to the depths with me and you will become a Kraken fan. Grung says, I think with ranking corners, you have to consider both ball skills and coverage. You can't have one without the other. Reek and Sherman have both. Agreed? Yeah. Ben Dennett, choice of halibut or salmon? Either one I like. Those are one of the few fishes I do like the taste of. Probably halibut. John Hobbs says, was it Lawrence or the coke he was doing? Bit of both. Coke couldn't have hurt it. Leland liked the Reed more than Ray. Ed Reed was phenomenal. One of the more unique safeties in NFL history. Fun player to watch, too. Joe Miller says, I think the quarterback situation can go the other way often too. Sam Darnold and Blake Gabbert get too many chances. That's a fair statement, Joseph. Completely fair. I agree. There are certain guys that end up getting like more. And what to me, I think I drive to with that is that not only is that there are those other guys that end up getting too many more, it's all then just off draft positioning. Because who are the guys who we see get the second and third chances? It is your Sam Darnolds, your Carson Wentz, your Blaine Gabbers, right? The guys picked up in the top of the first round of the draft. But then these second, third round guys, if they fail or they don't do right in that first chance, there's not as much of that second chance that comes to them. Is that because they're really not worthy of the second chance? Or is it because this whole draft positioning thing can start to get set into people's mind and affixed in people's mind, and not just us as the common fan, but even in NFL circles in the way that they view those players? Agreed, yeah. Megan says, 24 hours, dude? Come on, B. You know I was wide awake for 4 days for the draft. Oh, I got 24 hours. I can do it. Yeah. We got to get to the Super Bowl, though. But I'd be down to do it. Maze Guru says, in 24 hours, we'd end up chatting about knitting and cooking. We would cover a lot of different subjects over 24 hours. Definitely would not just be sticking on football. That's for sure. Leon says, I got to head out, y'all, but love seeing y'all in the chat more as we get close to the regular season. Go Hawks. Love you 12. Love right back to you, Leland. It's great to have you back in the chat, man. Have yourself a great summer out there in Alaska. We'll see you again here on another show soon. Connor says, I guess the best way would be Pro Football Reference AV since it adjusts for league averages each year. Sherman is 20th in career AV for corners with less games played than every other guy above him. I think that's a great, at first when you're putting that, I was going, I don't know, but I think that's actually fair. That's where we come back to on my rankings. People say, where's Richard for me? It's like top 15, top 20. That seems more right on the eyeball test. And so for the reference AV score to also kind of bear that out, adds up to me, right, Connor? And like you said, the interesting part about that being that by that AV score, which will allow for sort of the sample size of Sherman's career versus other corners that might have played 11, 12, 13, 14 years, is that he's played the least amount of the games above him of those guys up ahead of him. And so that's a telling part of that. Longevity has got to be a part of greatness's factor. Got to be part of the consideration. Megan says, come on, B. You're joining the dark side and your powers are weak to resist. I'll never join the dark side. I'll never join my father. Besides, what's your favorite kind of salmon? King or silver? I'll go king. But salmon's good. All salmon's good. Megan's your kryptonite. She's gonna dry on this one. She's dried on the Kraken turn. Man, so jacked on coffee to return 24-hour stream. I'd start jacked on coffee, and we probably have to finish off on drinking just to keep me sustained all the way through. So I'll fall apart. Mr. Isaac Brandon, do you have any other fun hobbies outside of the Seahawks? I like playing video games. I do like to write. I like going out and playing. I like playing my basketball, going walks. I'm pretty much a homebound guy for the most part. And to be honest with you, the Seahawks stuff tends to take up a lot of time because most of the days we're just kind of grinding on tape or grinding on the next video. But those other things I like to do. Those other things I'm definitely down on. But I'm more of a homebody as I've gotten older. I don't like going out as much. I like chilling at home, just hanging with my cats, watch a movie or something, or just keep it chill. Megan says, okay, your Luke Skywalker's impression sucks. I don't have a good Luke Skywalker. I got to own that. I can't even fake the funk on that one. Can't even fake the funk on that one. Can't you fade the funk? Alexander Brandon, I think you have done 2 different 12-hour streams. I have done a couple of 12-hour streams before. Never done a 24. But I'm open to doing a 24 at some point. I'm not against it. I could pull it off. Maybe I'd do like a 4-hour nap point where I'd be like this for 4 hours. Just but it could be interesting to go hard like that. It could be fun. Maybe we'll do a 24-hour stream building up to the first game of the year. You know, just the lead up to the first game all Saturday, watching college football, talking about it. Then just be completely in some kind of weird out of it mode by game time of the first game. I'm playing the Rams. I don't need to be awake for that. We're blowing the doors off the Rams. So, Maze Guru, are you able to make any cash from doing all this stuff? I've been doing pretty good on the channel as far as being able to basically sustain, through last year and not having to do a whole lot of side work. I'm actually right now giving a lot of consideration to going back to the west side at this point. because I would like to pick up a little bit more extra work that is just not as much available out here in Spokane, especially from the IT standpoint of things. So, and then I've got literally a psychopathic neighbor that I've just had move in below me. That's like, if you guys don't see me streaming for a couple of weeks, it might have been because he killed me. So this guy's a live wire. But so I'm kind of starting to think about doing that and get it back over onto it, because this is doing good right now, but definitely would like to kind of bump things up a little bit more in certain respects, job wise on the other side. It's kind of a doing IT from a contract standpoint. You get your ups and downs and stuff. Sometimes I've definitely been putting more time to the channel, so I've been cutting some of the stuff out. But no, once we get into the season, I'll be rolling on this and doing just fine with this, I'm sure, especially with how much growth we're getting. I mean, goodness, we're definitely going to hit the 15,000 mark this year as far as subscribers, and that's awesome. Awesome. Megan says, I'll wear you down about Chest of Steel and the Kraken Bee. It's my mission impossible, which I've chosen to accept. Well, I'm a stubborn man, and I do like to dig in. Mr. Isaac, I may have missed your response earlier, Brandon, but which player from the NFL would you steal from another team if cap was no issue and no quarterbacks allowed? Great question. Cap's no issue, so I don't have to worry about that. Which player above all else? I would probably take Chris Jones, but if not Chris Jones, it would probably be Aaron Donald. So I would be gravitating towards a defensive tackle, above all else at that point. But probably Chris Jones would be the guy for me. Adding him on the inside to this defense would be pretty nice. If not a defensive tackle, that's a toughie. Not a defensive tackle, then probably I don't know. Who would be the other guy? Trying to go through some of the names in my mind, but nobody's jumping out to me that's absolute. I don't want a receiver. I don't think a tight end. I was thinking center, right guard. Like, maybe a Roquan Smith kind of guy. Something that range. Something like that. Mr. Isaac, I'll be on paternity leave starting in a couple weeks. Got my first baby on the way. I'll listen to 24-hour stream while I rock the baby to sleep. Sounds good, man. Well, maybe we'll do a lean up to the first game. We'll see what people, we'll throw that out there for folks in the chat here as we go get closer to the season. Maybe we'll do a 24-hour stream leading up to that first game of the season. That might be kind of fun. John Hobbs says, shout out to the Rally Cat. She appreciates that. Say thank you. Say thank you. Can you say thank you? Give me a thank you. She said thank you, John. I speak cat fluently. Jen Maz, what up, fam? Tornado watch here in southern Ontario. Well, I hope you have a nice deep cellar, Jen, because those are freaky. And that's the only thing it sounds like you can do when a tornado's coming. Just get down that cellar and hold that cellar door closed. Stay safe out there. Don't be a hero. Megan says, stubborn? Oh, really? I have you beaten so many ways on that. You'd be surprised, Megan. I'm a low-key stubborn. I seem to be not stubborn, but then when you look deeper, it's like, oh, man. He's like dry cement. Greg says, Seahawks fans are in Sauce's head. You love to see it. He's being way too lippy about his worry about this whole situation, in my opinion. Way too lippy. Erickson says, what up, Brando from West Washington? What's up, Erickson? How you doing, man? It's good to see you in the chat. Very good to see you in the chat. Jen Mosam in Hamilton. And stay safe out there, Jen. We don't want nothing to happen to you, so keep that cellar well within hand. I know those tornadoes can turn quick. Jen Moss says, also Sauce sucks. Yes, he does. John Hobbs says, cool, very sweet cat. She is very sweet. She's an awesome cat. Basically, kind of the mascot on the channel here, I would say. Feeling good. And I did want to, folks, do a little bit of something here. We're going to kind of get started to wrap up a tiny bit here, but I actually wanted to play this for you guys because I did promise this earlier and I've gotten through the chat. So why not play this for you and see what you guys think? This is actually a little bit of the conversation that went down between one. So this is a conversation that went down between Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, DJ Reed, former Seahawk, and Darius Slay, cornerback for the Eagles, as Chauncey is trying to explain here to Sauce Gardner as to why Tariq Woolen is better. So I'm gonna play this for you guys. I'll be bouncing right back here to chat. I do want you guys to check this out though. So take a listen to this. I'll turn down my mic so you guys can hear this. So
Woodley plays corner by himself out there in Seattle. I said, you and DJ a team though. I ain't discredit none of that. Hold on. Didn't discredit none of that. This was the main issue. I say it's the market. That's everything. I say, bro, if y'all just swap market, don't.
So you think Woolen just play by himself? Like you don't think they other corner is nice?
Bro,
what's his name? 30? What's his name?
Listen. If we're gonna go off of production, we going off of names.
Talk about Mike Jackson,
how we
bro. He be putting in pain, bro.
Listen, that's what I'm telling you. I'm chiming in on the conversation that a vet had brought to the light. That's what I'm telling you. I'm chiming in. I'm giving my honest opinion.
Stop pussyfooting it so much, Slay.
Huh?
Oh shit, I'm talking about my golf.
Oh, my fault. Okay, now the vet basically, I'm talking about if you put Willie in a different market, regardless of playing with another corner, we're talking about you and him. I ain't talking about hating on you saying better. The reason I'm saying he better, and I ain't saying as a person athletically, we looking as a football. He out there by himself. He ain't really got no other corner. It's Willie and who? That's the market, how they looking at it. Everybody, I'm like, okay, cool, it's you and DJ. And I'm like, okay, yeah, all right. It ain't gonna be as much targets because it's you and DJ as compared to Willie.
All right, let me say something because I'm
I totally forgot that I had my mic off. God, I'm an idiot. My bad. Mic was off there. Sorry, folks. I got to, Jesus. And I have to turn my mic off so you guys don't get the echo. So this is where I need an engineer at times. It's hard to do all these different moving parts together. Let me repeat that, Randall. So we discussed a little bit. Thank you, Randall, for the $20 donation. He says, what's the deal, buddy? Your interaction with, hopefully there is some sound now. Sound should be all good back. I figured it out. Can't hear me still? Can you guys hear me okay now? All right, we're back. Got it. Okay. Sorry about the sound. I need an engineer, folks. So sometimes it goes off. My bad. Especially if I'm trying to move different things here on my end and show different little deals. I wanted to play you guys that cut and I just didn't, the deal. So fun conversation between those guys online. Gardner's just trying to explain to Tariq Woolen that, or to Sauce Gardner that this is really a national thing. This is something we've talked about as to how this whole debate's been settled, seemingly where Sauce is the next greatest thing since sliced bread and Woolen's all right. And you have multiple pros from Asante Samuels to Chauncey Gardner trying to explain to this a little bit. This is really a national narrative more than this is about who is the better player, because Woolen's the better player. And it's very clear to the pros' eyes. Randall, thank you for the $20 donation. I just done a real long, illustrious thing that I was trying to show off on that. So we were talking a little bit on this show. You were asking for a synopsis, Randall, and thank you for that $20 donation. What we really talked about at the top of the show was the quarter, half coverage. And the fact that you played this at a rate, as I showed on this overhead here over my right side, at 25% rate. You played quarters 7.5%, while you saw your cover 3 rate go down to 34.5%, really being dialed down versus what you ran at prior. And so you've dialed up the quarters at the cost of the cover 3. This means that you have more balance throughout the course of your coverages. 13% to cover 1, 6% to cover 2, 34.5% to cover 3, 25% to quarter, half, 7.5% to quarters. Now we have a little bit more of a wider range of different coverages that we're utilizing rather than just running cover 3 75, 80, 85, 90% of the time, which then becomes very predictable for opposing offenses. That alone, where you're removing the predictability. I think as well, Randall, this quarter, half defense opens up more for our playmakers to go make plays. You now have Tariq Woolen in a press look on the X receiver. The X receiver tends to be on the line of scrimmage, so he tends to be a little bit vulnerable to press looks, which then feeds more to the strengths of Tariq Woolen. I think as well, though it's a quarter, half where you have to the half side field, the safety, and then you have the corner playing his kind of off coverage, not off coverage, but he's playing off coverage and drop into a deep half. You could also now within this run a little bit more of instances of quarter man, where you've got the quarters all in the other places, but now you're just running man coverage with Tariq. But so you're now opening a little bit more of the man-based aspects of things. I also think this allows you to open up Randall to bring down Adams as a will linebacker at times in this defense, and he can come rush off the edge and kind of move around that line of scrimmage as that sort of apex defender role that Alabama has used in this kind of aspect of things with these kind of coverages. Let's not forget that we have Luke Scott, a former secondary coach for Alabama, who loves this kind of coverage look. There's also a lot of other elements into it, Randall, that I think that help out to make you a little more complex, a little more less than just being simplified to where you have guys sitting in off coverage, dropping into their deep zones, and quarterbacks can predict that. There's something called the mod thing that can be engaged within this coverage by a read, by a look, by one of the corners, one of the secondary players calling it out. The mod coverage scheme essentially means that the cornerback will have the man coverage on the one receiver if he runs deep and outside routes. If the one ends up running a shorter route than 5 yards, the cornerback calls smash or under. So you have some live fire adjustments you can make to these coverages that you couldn't really do with the cover 3. Cover 3 is the safeties in center field. Your corners in recent years playing cover 3 are in off coverage. They're not playing press, and they're dropping into a bail technique. Very predictable, very easy to attack on the smaller, shorter routes. Now you can call out some of these adjustments to maybe squeeze a little bit better down on those shorter routes, Randall. So the quarter half is a defense that I could easily see start to rise into prominence, not only because it gives you a different look to go away from the cover 3 and cover 2 stuff that you've leaned so heavily into, but also because it fits to the type of talent that you have on this football team and looking to get the most out of these kind of players and put them in the positions to succeed. So I think it's going to be beyond 25% this year. I bet we crack over 30% in that coverage this season. And when going back and playing that, Randall, that play with of course, Quandre Diggs from last year that's on this media file I'm playing right now, this play itself is coming out of quarter, half. You know, Quandre's just deciding to cut off his quarter responsibility because of his film study, and he knows he can do it. And so I think that's why I want to do the show on this. So I think this is going to be a big part of maybe potentially the defensive turnaround that you get from this team going into the future is because of this defense. Sorry about that sound thing there, folks. And thanks for letting me know about the mic being off. Space and Randall. Appreciate you guys donating to do that. It's my bad. You can text me too, Randall. I'm always looking at my phone if that pops up. Side Jim, where'd you get that animation of beast mode? Just type into Google beast mode GIF. You can even search by Google by GIFs if you do the advanced setting changes, and you can pull it out from that. I can always send you, if you want to hit me up by email too, I can always send you an attachment of it. I wouldn't mind doing that. Julian Lem's going to be fire. Oh, he is. Another guy we talk about, you know, being able to run a variety of different coverages and change it up and have a certain look this way and come back that way. When you have a guy in Julian Love that had a lot of snaps last year, strong safety, free safety, strong safety, you can move them all around. You can move Jamal then all around. It gets harder to kind of designate what player's doing what offensively. Like, they've got 2 strong safeties in the game. What are we supposed to do with this? How do we treat this? Do we tack this with the pass? But if we do that, Julian Love's not just your typical strong safety. He can play like a free safety. So in certain respects, it's like they've got 2 free safeties out there. A lot of things you can do to utilize him, Jen, and being creative opens the door to creativity, which is a place this defense has left shut for a very long time, to the point that there's dust on the doorknob. Arturo says Jamal Adams and a will linebacker is a good fit. He has the strength and the tackling ability to be elite. He does. And I think looking at this, look at this little image here. The thing that stands out to me here, which is this is the cover 6. Cover 6 is quarter, half. One means the other. You guys ever hear it referenced? But look what the Will's doing here. You've got the free safety with the half field coverage, right? So he's going to the depths. You've got essentially the Will at this point with 2 defensive linemen in front of them. So they're kind of protected if you run the defense this way and the way that you can set it. You can even put him behind the edge if you want to really protect him. But then he gets to be kind of a floater player, right? Because your W or your Will linebacker, that's what the W means here in this graphic I'm showing. He could also come right up to the line of scrimmage like we've seen Jamal often do as an edge pass rusher. And whereas before you would have to do that by removing a safety off the back end, which then opened up the back end to be attacked if you have Jamal come as a blitzer, now it's not as easy to run that adjustment as an offense if you happen to see him do that from that position. And he also has a little bit of protection there where he's not having to worry about as much of the collisions and having to play, pure linebacker role. It's also been a place where a lot of defenses, including Alabama, have utilized a safety in this way, where the Will becomes more of a strong safety than a Will at times. And you can see his responsibility, especially with Jamal, going to the curl hook or coming back to a robber route to the middle of the field. Their responsibilities are so much more eased versus what you ask the strong safety to do at times, as you can see in this cover 6 look, which is you got to get to the 4th of the field. You got to go cover half a field. That's not as much the strength of Jamal Adams' game, I would say. Maze Guru, the Hawks Nest, would you rather win this year's Super Bowl or get next year's first 10 draft picks? Oh, Jesus. I'll take the Super Bowl, Maze. Bird in the hand. Bird in the hand, man. Can't get greedy, can't get big eyes. You give me a Super Bowl win, I'm going to go take it. Got to do it. It sounds like the chat's in agreement with me. It's a great question, though. I'm tempted. I'm tempted to take the 10 picks, but yeah, can't quite do it. Jen May says first half of the season, Diggs sucks last season because he was scared. He admitted in his interview. Definitely was taking him some time to come back a bit. Understandable. He had that broken foot at the very last game of the prior season. I think it was kind of wondrous that he got back as fast as he could. And he has fantastic instincts, Jen. And not rehabbing, I think, is going to be a big part because so many players do talk about that of, going into the season after rehabbing and not being kind of at their full role because they were just getting their body right and not having an offseason where you're doing that, but being able to purely train. I do firmly feel Diggs is going to have his best season. More of these different coverages you're running, less of center field approach, back to kind of full health. The strongest, deepest defense he's had since he's been here in Seattle, since he's had in his entire career, including Detroit. I go back round and round on this one, and I think he's going to end up with 6-7 interceptions, and we're going to look at this season of Diggs and say this was his best year. Mega says, B, how much longer are we going? Just felt one of my broken bones in my wrist shift again. Oh, we won't go super long tonight. I got to get some stuff done here on my side of it here. So I got to look into a couple things. Let's go a little bit longer. Erickson says, yeah, understandable. His injury was pretty gnarly. He knows his full potential and isn't going to BS. Rad dude. Great dude. And yeah, it's understandable. You come off that injury and you come back and play game one. You play all 17 games of the next season after your foot was turned this way while your leg's this way. I'm going to have a lot of respect for you. A lot of respect for you. And even with it being that way, he had his hand on a good 4 or 5 other interceptions. He could have led the league in interceptions, still kind of working himself back into that form if he had just caught a couple of those extra INTs. Jen May says, you got to catch KJ All Day with Cliff Averill episode. I got it, Jen. I totally watched it. I think all of those are must watch as far as the Cliff Averill stuff goes. He's asking good questions. They're not just doing, what I like about it is a lot of those foreign players can sometimes get you into just some stupid stuff they talk about that nobody cares about this. Get onto the stuff that people really want to hear about, and what's good is it seems like it's getting better and they're getting more and more on point with covering subjects and topics and getting into things that are what people would really want to discuss. So props to KJ on that, Jen. He's doing a great job with it and he's moving in the right direction. Definitely doing a great job. Mickey says, MB, remember what I said about my father and my stubborn streak? I know, but I got one myself too, so my stubborn matches, they're stubborn, I guess. Erickson says, Mafe and Taylor are going to make a jump. I could see it, man. Pass rushing coach they got. Both of them getting another year older, another year wiser. Could definitely see it. Megan says 10 picks would be epic if it was a great class, but would still take the Super Bowl. I would too. Thing to remember as well is that if you're paying 10 guys top 10 picks, each of those guys is like costing $10 million a year. That's $100 million off your cap. I'm sure we would find a way to work with it, but there's some issues that come with just having those 10 picks on top of it, just having the pure talent. It's a good problem to have, but I'll take the Super Bowl. We got to take the Super Bowl, Maze. Got to take the Jen says, so let it be written, let it be done. That's right. Sajin says, it's our time. It's our time here and now, guys, for Paul and Pete. Let's get it done. Let's do it. Jen says he also broke his leg. So yeah, so it was kind of a 1-2 there. It's gnarly. That's a horrible injury. I know you can get back to 100% supposedly from it, but it's one thing to even get back to 100% where your mentality, if your mind's had you go through it and it happened, it's like you're just naturally going to be hesitant. It's going to take you a while to get your feet back under you. Well, literally back under you. Jeffrey Todd, the Seahawks have been releasing footage of JSN burning Witherspoon. Are you concerned for Witherspoon at all, or is it just a testament to how good JSN is? I don't know, Jeffrey, if there was other footage that was shown. As I understand it, there's one play. They've shown it. We've seen 2 different angles of it, so it might seem like it's 2 plays, but I only understand it as being one play where they're running a pick play, a switch release at the line of scrimmage. So it's not just purely JSN burning him off the line of scrimmage. It's also the rub route from the outside receiver that's taking Witherspoon an extra couple steps to get around the rub route to then get to the 9 route deep. So it's a great route run by JSN. He shows off the quickness that he has, and it's a great throw, but I don't think it's anything of necessarily huge concern. It's also with JSN operating out of the slot and not on the outside on that particular play. Yeah, I think it's just one clip of it. Erickson, DK sounded focused this year. Glad to hear. Me too. I love what he's done. And he certainly could be ready to jump out into that 1,400, 1,500 yard type season, especially if he can get some more of those single matchups, Erickson, some more single coverage situations. Sajin says, I just realized we are true 12s, lest you know otherwise. If you know otherwise, we will take them. No doubt about that. Jen says, I want to get a throwback Bobby jersey. When are they coming? I don't know, Jen. Isn't it weird that they haven't already started kind of releasing them? I mean, it's like free money. Seahawks are kind of leaving on the table, because I think that stuff would go like hotcakes if they started to release it out. Space says, Ninjas, that's that good. He is that good. And I don't want to cover him in the slot. I don't care who I am, Witherspoon or anybody else. That guy's going to be a problem in this league to try to figure out the slot. He is so quick and so able to just utilize that quickness with great body control on top of it. And there's not a lot you can do at times, because he's just faster in that space than you are. I don't know when they're for sale though, Jen. Week 8, Megan? What are they thinking with that? Why wait to week 8? They'll put it out before that, but they're waiting too long on this stuff. They're waiting far, far, far too long. May says, Paul, we love you and miss you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for Paul Allen, everything you did. It is appreciated. And Herbicide says, I'm out. Everybody have a good night. That sounds like a good time here, too, to call it here on this one, Herbicide. I got to the bottom of the chat here, and so we will go ahead and turn this sucker around here and kind of wrap this up. Let's get the last couple of questions in. I'm going to be coming back on Thursday. I released a community post to members of the channel, patrons of the channel, that we're going to be running a Zoom meeting tomorrow. So 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I've got the link out there. Feel free to join the meeting. Just going to be some open discussion about the channel and questions. Anything you guys might have, just some interaction between me and you guys. So please do be on the lookout for that. I'll be back as well on Sunday. So we're going to be doing an undrafted rookie free agent show where I'll be showing some of the footage and tape of these UDFAs that I've been looking over a little bit. I'm going to concentrate on kind of just the base kind of 5 guys. I'll show a little bit of Arquan Bush footage, a little bit of O'Connell footage from Montana. But we're going to be locking in on Landers, Bobo, Jonah Tavai, and Nolan Gryffindorf, the Dakota tight end that we grabbed as well. So we're going to be looking at those guys mainly because I think they got the best chance to make the roster. I don't think a lot of these undrafted rookie free agents have a chance to really make this roster based on where their skill set is, based on the strength of this roster and how deep we are. So that's why I want to concentrate on kind of those select guys. But we'll be doing a whole show kind of around them. Be ready for that on 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, as I will be turning it around over to them on that. Couple last just little thoughts here from you folks. Sean, I can't wait to see the old school jersey either. I wish we got 5, 6, 7, 8 games of it this year. I would love that. And they'll probably get out Megan early. You know how they do it. It's like the delivery system with Amazon, where it tells you like, it will be arriving in 2 weeks. And you're like, 2 weeks. And then you get it in 3 days and you're like, oh, they just want to set expectations. I get it. Randall, thank you for the $5 donation. Appreciate you, man, for that other one as well. Very kind of you. It says, besides becoming predictable, what are the negative of the quarter half look? Are you less susceptible to certain things from offense? The main thing that when I dived really deep the past week, especially Randall, into this to trying to kind of get a grips on that, good, bad, and the other. It still is a protect deep type defense at its core. It's not cover 3, it's not cover 2, but there is still at its core, we want to keep things clean over the top component to this defense. So you are still going to see issues. The main issues that come out on this are going to be the flat routes. Flat routes to either side of the field are going to be problematic because you're having guys dropping with depth on the outside, and you don't necessarily have any safeties coming down to squeeze those particular routes. So that's the part that you have to clean up. The slow drag routes across the field work in the same way. So let me show you Randall here with this overhead again with the cover 6 overhead here. And again, cover 6 is quarter half. They both mean the same thing. But you essentially end up with Tariq Woolen running, let's say, trail on the X. You have Mike Jackson on the Z. He's dropping with depth. Your free safety, strong safety drop with depth. You have your linebackers, let's say the S, which it's listed here as this S is Sam linebacker, but let's say that's a slot. And so instead of the fullback here in this alignment, you have that as a slot, the Sam, and you have the F as actually a slot wide receiver. So what would happen there is that guy would be still dropping to depth, where you can see in none of this coverage, if you think about the flat routes that you would run, that's where you can easily see how that's exposed at that point in time. And that's where it's going to be harder to do that, as well as the slant. So let's take, for instance, the Y here, or the tight end. Let's say that tight end Randall's running a drag route to the weak side of the field. Okay. So towards the X side of the field. Well, you have your linebackers dropping coverage. You've got Tariq then, rolling with him then in trail technique. That drag route then is theoretically open as long as pass protection can hold up long enough for the tight end drag to get to that side of the football field. So every defense is going to have, of course, Randall, some kind of hole to it or limitations that you can attack. This one would be the shorter routes, the flat routes especially kept coming up over and over again. This tends to be historically a defense that you run to counter trips. So because trips always gave cover 3 issues for us, Randall. That was one of the great cover 3 beaters, was to run trips to one side, 3 wide receivers stacked in a grouping. And this used to be used that way. Now you're kind of using it outside of just those situations. But those are the 2 main spots, the flat routes and the short drags, guys out there in space like that, maybe even potentially bubble screens at that point, because you run the bubble screen, and if the safeties in the corners aren't reading that and they're dropping into their bail technique, they're 2-3 steps now late to get back up there and rally to come make the tackle. So it's the short stuff you got to get good at. Now, the nice thing is like there are those concepts I described like mod, where there's still some built-in adjustments the defense can make on the fly as far as a call to then go and take away those short routes. But now it's on the back of the defense to come up with a recognition of it, seeing it pre-snap, having everybody on the same page and seeing it early rather than post-snap suddenly reacting to it and being caught off guard by it a little bit. Jen Mays has got a lot of tornadoes going. Jen, get down in the cellar, Jen. Down in the cellar. Saijan says, we are coming. Be ready. Be ready for y'all. Oh, we're coming, man. Megan says, okay, B and 12s. My wrist is killing, so I'm going to have to say farewell. Been great as always. Been great as always, Megan. You have yourself a great night. Take care of that wrist. Greg Sauce being better than Woolen currently can be argued, but we know who has the higher ceiling. Reek will have the better career. And you know what? He will retire as the GOAT of cornerbacks. Mark my words. I will mark it, Grug. And I think that he is absolutely on a superstar path more than any other player we have right now on this roster. Woolen has got that trajectory ahead of him right now as it currently stands. I am that high on him. I don't know if he'll get to all-time best state of things, but I haven't seen a corner come in and have that kind of season like he did last year. Not even Richard Sherman. So I love where you're at with it, and I think I'm probably pretty close as well. Jen Mays, you have a great night. Stay safe with that tornado. Don't get blown away. Mason must wear the 10 throwback and honor the chest of steel B. I bet I can see you into that. I can see you in that. Jen May says, do you play cover 6 in nickel or dime? Technically speaking, you can run it in either one, Jen. It's typically seen in nickel or even in base situations where you would run it. I don't think you're going to do it as much in dime. I wouldn't think, but you're not I'm sure it's in the playbook of every defense that they could run it from that, because at the end of the day, then you're just flopping like on this chart I'm showing with the cover 6, your S and your W here, which is your weak side linebacker, your Will, and your strong side linebacker, your Sam. Those become now 2 cornerbacks, right? And so you have the W would be on the line of scrimmage as a cornerback is your nickel corner, and then the S would be as your 4th corner on the other side, and the F would be a receiver as well. So you could still run their same allotments where the W goes to the curl hook, the S goes to the half flat, right? Those responsibilities still fit. They still have the stuff on the back end, and it all still makes sense even if you run it from dime. But I think it's more often, if you saw the propensity of it last year where Seahawks ran it 25% of the time, I bet probably 80-90% of that was run from nickel or a base rather than from a dime aspect of it. May says, I'm back. I had to walk the dog without a leash. That was interesting. That's always tricky. Jen, are we going to run screens this year? I hope we do, Jen. I hope we do. The team has not really shown a great commitment to it since Coach Carroll's been here as far as the screen game goes. So you want to make a guess about something that sort of hasn't happened in 10 years, you think should happen. There's a definite opening in the offense to happen. Some of what's held it back from happening, Jen, is the fact that you don't have the linemen that can move out in space to hit the second level blocks. Do you have more of those now? Yeah. Cross, Lucas, Bradford, Oluwatimi. I think these guys are going to be better built to go hit those kind of blocks and then make those plays more successful. And you could argue, Jen, why they haven't called the plays as much as they know they weren't going to be successful, and why they knew they weren't going to be successful is they knew they had the offensive linemen who weren't really predisposed athletically to being able to run those kind of plays, because it requires the linemen to get out in space 7, 8, 9 yards down the field to make those blocks work. So I think so. Jen May says, nice to see you doing a collab with Dan Vines soon. Absolutely. Yeah, me and Dan Vines are scheduled, I think, next Wednesday. I'm going to go over onto his channel. So we'll be going over there and doing a little bit of discussing over there on his side of it. So I'll let you guys know on Sunday the exact time angle on that. But yep, going to go over there onto Dan's side of things and discuss with him a little bit. Want to do a little bit more of the collabs as I can here as we go forward. Jen May says, Sauce will never be 6'4". No, he won't. No, he won't. He won't ever be no 4'2" either, will he, Jen? And you're never going to get that 4'26" either. Megan, must wear the throwback arm chest for the Zoom call. Okay. That's fair, Megan. I like the Zorn jersey. Zijin says, much love, guys. Take it to heart because I do not say this lightly. Once again, much love. Hey, much love right back at you, Zijin. Appreciate jumping in the chat and always being a part of the community as you are. We got some great people here, and you are one of them. Jen says, our cornerbacks are more athletic than our linebacker. That's probably true. Jen says, GSN's a screen machine. He should be used that way, yeah. He certainly is going to be, I think, featured a little bit with that. And maybe that's a little bit of this too, Jen, is that last year, once you lost Marquise Goodwin, once there was no more Eskridge, you didn't really have the guy you trusted to throw those bubble screens to run it that way. You know, and you needed just the lineman and you need the guy that can catch it to make some damage happen with the ball in his hands when he does do it. So it's kind of you need them both to make those screens happen. Trenny says, just stopping in. I don't normally get to catch a stream, but I love watching the streams after they happen. Thanks for all you do, B. Well, thank you, Trenty, for jumping on in, man. Sorry you caught me right here at the end of things, just as live, catching me live on just kind of the finishing things of things. But I appreciate you watching anytime you can, live or recorded. Anyway, it's awesome and helps me out in a lot of respects. So thank you so much, man. I love what I do. This channel is by far my favorite thing to do. Somebody saying, well, you got a lot of other stuff. No, I like doing this because this is just so much fun for me. So appreciate you. Alan A says, evening, everyone. Hope all is well. Go Hawks. Go Hawks. Megan says, you know I'm going to keep showing you how good my boy B is. I know you will, Megan. I know you will for sure. I know you will. All right. Well, I think we caught everybody up there. We got through all the chat there, so we will go ahead and put a button on this. I will be back 5 Pacific Standard Time this Sunday, and we will get rolling on that side of things. So I hope you guys are getting ready here. We find ourselves now about 15 days away from the start of training camp, for maybe the potential beginning of a very magical run for our Seattle Seahawks. This team has never in its history potentially ever been quite this talented. It's young. It's a matter of, is it going to mature fast enough to become a contender this year, this fast, this quick? Who knows? But it's going to be one hell of a fun team to watch. There's no doubt about that. With this many personalities, with this many great players, with this many myriad of talents across the board on this team, with this much depth, with this old, spry coach still ready to try to go out there and make some noise. It is going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. I hope you guys are ready to roll with me throughout the course of the season, through the ups, through the downs, and hopefully the height of heights, as we hope to see our Seahawks turn back into contenders once more. I appreciate you guys watching. Do me that favor and hit that like button. If you're not subscribed up, we're just a hair away from 12,600 subscribers. So help get us up over the top. Get yourself subscribed to the channel if you're not already. I would really appreciate it. Cameron Robinson says, what up, B? Did you play football at some point in your younger life? I played football right up until the point of the start of high school. And for me, I was a real late bloomer, physically speaking. Eventually got up to 6 feet tall, but I was one of those guys that, doesn't make his growth until really late in high school. So I was kind of not a naturally fast guy, not naturally super strong guy, didn't have a lot of stuff I could naturally lean on. So I got to about to high school, and I had a pretty big high school at that time. We had a lot of people. And so everybody was on the team was 6'3", 6'4", and just there was not much I could really do. So I took it as long as I could kind of take it for where my ability could take it. But I did kind of run into that wall a little bit where it was, 4 string of this wasn't really worth a whole lot for me if I, wasn't going to play and there was no chance of it. So it's like, all right, is what it is. But I love the game though. Do love the game. It's good to see you, Cameron. Maze Guru of the Hawks Nest. I think playing a dime a lot this year with Adams up close may be good. I'd be down with it, man. Maybe he could be your dime defender too, next to Bobby. Maybe he could be the middle linebacker, flip out Bobby instead of, there's different things you could do with it. I like running dime, and I do think there's teams that you play that love going to those 4 wide receiver sets, and that's the way you counter it. Certainly like the Rams, for instance. They love their dime looks. They love their 4 wide receiver looks. So, going to that wouldn't be the worst thing to call upon. I just don't know if you do dime, if the best route then to go is to go to like a cover 6 look. You can run it from that, but I think that there's some other probably better coverages from dime that are probably a little more effective, I would say. Jen Mays, you stay safe out there. You're in that tornado, so you got to stay safe out there. And Megan says, I'll follow the John Jim Zorn side. We shall see. Maybe you get me by this next Sunday. Who knows? We'll just have to see how it goes. I do appreciate you guys watching. Thank you to all of you guys out there. Hit that like button. I'll be back this Sunday, and I hope I don't have to remind you, but I'm going to do it anyway because I got to do it every time and make sure my folks don't ever, ever, ever forget. Go Hawks.